Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of epic racing action in the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge Season 7 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing and proudly powered by none other than Oris Digital. Round 6 has come around and with it the conclusion of our German doubleheader. Last time out we were at the Nürburgring Große Preisstrecke or the GP circuit at the bottom of the Eiffel Mountains, but today we exchanged the Nürburgring for another German circuit as we've made our way all the way to the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben, a circuit arguably overshadowed by the majority of its neighbours and not necessarily known for Formula 1 racing. It is a circuit that definitely has been a staple of the domestic and national calendars and even a degree of international motorsport, playing an annual round of each of the series such as DTM and also Porsche Sports Cup and more recently the Wheeling Euro NASCAR series. This circuit is arguably as flat as they come in some respects with very little elevation change, but what it lacks in elevation change, it makes up for most certainly when it comes to the combination of corners. An absolutely brilliant combination of 14 corners, many of them sweepers or low-speed apexes and also direction changes woven into the mix, and with a rather slippery track surface as well, even in the dry. This is one of those circuits where it's just as much about consistency as it is about outright pace. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this race broadcast live from circuit side as you tune in tonight on the YouTube channel known as TX1TX, all 30 Paul Walsh. All you got to do is search those and you can be tuning in and joining many who tune in, week out to catch all the racing in the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge. But as we get set and all of our drivers get themselves ready to be not shy of the circuit, we encourage you not to be shy either in the chat. Do say hi, don't be shy, feel free to let us know how you're doing today. And indeed, if you've had a bit of a difficult day, perhaps you've got a bit of a frown on your face, we're going to do our utmost to make sure that frown is turned upside down into a smile and deliver you some absolutely incredible racing action here just before we make our way into the Christmas break of the GT4 Challenge Series. And in terms of our schedule for tonight, times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinate Time UTC, while times are as follows. In just under 13 minutes time at 8 o'clock this evening, it will be our 15-minute qualifying session as we normally do have it, and all the drivers will be making their way out there and trying to deliver their best possible laps, after which we'll be making our way straight into our race, 60 minutes in duration, a full flat-out feature with some pit stops woven into the mix as well, and come the end of it, we'll see another driver or two take a checker flag, no doubt about it, whether it be overall in the AM class, but who will it be and who will net themselves an early Christmas present at this wonderful German circuit? All that and more we're going to find out in the commentary booth. You have myself, Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 or Britain's Bit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll bring you all your racing action over the entirety of the season. So as we come then into our final round of 2025, after which we do have of course 2 more rounds, let's give you a recap of the season thus far. We opened up the bank account when it came to championship points on the 7th of October at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. In Belgium, it was battles aplenty, and it was the rivalry of many a driver, particularly at the front, none other than Dries van Langendonk versus Alex Gall, where the former beat the latter when it came to overall proceedings, whereas John Bailiff opened up the first win ever in the AM class for the GT4 Challenge Series. In round number 2, we made our way to United Kingdom, and there at Donington Park on the 21st of October, it was Alex Gall who led the way ahead of both Matias Penttilä and also Stuart Reynolds as the two fought absolutely ferociously for second and Gall was able to break away. Meanwhile in the AM class it was Win It or Bin It Racing who were looking to be on course for a 1-2 and it was going to be none other than John Bailiff ahead of teammate Eric Manenveld until Bailiff had a late technical issue with the car which meant he had to settle for second and it was Manenveld who took the win. Then it was Circuit des 24 Hours de Bonn that played host on the 4th of November. And at the French circuit there, well, it was absolutely flat out every step of the way. And we saw a very quick and formidable Ford Mustang in the very capable hands of none other than a driver who we haven't seen on the grid for some time. And you know and love him and normally refer to him as none other than what is, I do believe, as his name does escape my mind there, but it will come back very shortly. And it was Daniel Parent-Smith in particular. There's his name. Almost referred to Dries van Langendonk again, but it was Daniel Parent-Smith who absolutely romped away to victory overall. Meanwhile, in the AM class, well, John Bailiff was once again stopped from making it 2 wins of the season as he was held to the close in the end, and it was the Dutchman of none other than Dennis Van Beelen who was able to sneak the win away from him. Then when we made our way to the Netherlands, it was not Dennis Van Beelen who took the victory there. Indeed, there was some surprises in store, no doubt about it, and we're not going to spoil who took the AM win in that one because you'll have to watch the broadcast back. It was absolute madness to say the least, with every driver inside the top 5 finishing positions of the AM class being involved in early instance on the 18th of November, whereas meanwhile in the overall category was Alex Gall who was able to romp away once again. But last time out, Alex Gall was was not able to make it another win, it was Stuart Reynolds who took the win, and it all came down to strategy and minor mistakes, and definitely a race not to be missed. And if you did miss it on the 2nd of December, well, thankfully the broadcast is available as a video on demand here on the YouTube channel you're tuning into, and we definitely recommend you go back and watch it. Whereas meanwhile, of course, in the AM class, well, it was an absolutely unpredictable round as well, because John Bailiff, he looked to be set on course to take a victory, as did Mark Johnson, who absolutely dominated qualifying. But in the end, it was Dennis Van Beelen who brought things home for his second win of the season. So it means we are set very nicely coming into this round on the 16th of December 2025 at the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben. And after today, we have a 3-week Christmas break, and then we'll return on the 6th of January 2026 for the Red Bull Ring in the neighbouring Austria, and then we make our way back to the United Kingdom for the Alton Park circuit. We bring the curtain down on the 20th of January. So not many rounds to go, and with drop scores in effect, you can understand now if points are becoming increasingly precious. But speaking of scores, let's talk a little bit about the standings then after 5 rounds. And firstly, started off with the overall Drivers' Championship standings. We've taken your feedback in the fact that we did have both the overall and the AM Drivers' Championship standings all together on a single screen. It didn't quite work out for those viewing on a TV. So here's just the overall standings today. We'll talk about the AMs very shortly. And as we can see, Alex Gold leads by 12 points, with those drop scores becoming a factor for Chicane and Apex Bitters, ahead of Stuart Reynolds, and right now seems to be standing one step ahead of the Fury Simsport driver, but he's got a lot of work to do, with Reynolds finally picking up that maiden win of the season, and it will give him the confidence that he may just be able to close the gap down before all is too late. Meanwhile, in the question mark of third, well, it's a further 12 points to Matias Penttilä, the RD Simsport driver who wasn't on the grid last time out, and we'll be hoping to see him back once again today and looking to give his all, because he really has been the third member of this three-way fight for the top of the table. Nils Corr for Satellite Racing, don't forget him. He finally had a bit more fortune last time out in Germany, and the Satellite Racing driver definitely was the full fastest of the running order, you could say, albeit the third fastest, we should really say, with the absence of Penttilä, and he demonstrated the ability to make his way onto that podium, ahead of Taylor Adams, who sits in 5th for Regenta Sim Racing on 64 points, who's only 2 ahead of Ben Idris Abdullahi. And Satellite Racing drives then a further 3 ahead of the prototype Guy Edwards, with Jake Cranstone, Matt Slade and Chris Jennings rounded off your top 10. And the Axis Sport driver there, well, what an odd run of form, in the fact that we do have there the AM driver, the head of the AMs in the overall standings, but he's not the head of the AMs when it comes to their actual championship. More on that very shortly. He's only ahead of both Dennis Van Beelen and Rob Sharp by a single point. And then we do have in 13th place John Bailiff, the man who does lead the AM championship. Well, oddly enough, he sits in 4th when you consider the overall standings. Well, you'd never predict that, but that's how the standings points completely change up, depending if you look at just the AM finishing positions or the overall finishing positions. Daniel Parent-Smith, he sits in 14th SRM Yellow, head of teammate Dries van Langdorp there, based on result countback. And it's Ollie Carbadine, who's 16th for Oris Racing Yellow, head of Dominic Brennan, with John Roberts, Kenzo Craigie and Simon Povey round off your top 20. And outside the top 20, plenty of drivers from Lee Berridge all the way through there to Giles Gardner, who's in 33rd on a single point, and yet score any points. Annie Marsden, Ben Trier, Colin Wynn, Edward May, Martin Kenyon, Stephen Burns, and Mark Kent. But now, what about in the AM Drivers' Championship? When we take the AMs and take their finishing positions in class and apply the points, how does that change? Well, here we go, and as we can see after 5 rounds, it is John Bailiff who leads, but only by 3 points to win it or bin it race. And the Axis Simsport driver Chris Jennings behind him. Well, Jennings right now perhaps has not been the most standout of the drivers when it comes to wins. He's yet to pick up a win this season. However, his consistency is what's really made him a major championship contender. Whereas Bailiff has had a degree of inconsistency, and many would argue it's due to bad luck. Well, bad luck or not, the problem is Bailiff's consistency has held him back from pulling away at the top. Dennis Van Beelen as well for Chicane and Apex Missers. Yes, he has 2 wins on the board, but he's also had his own degree of foul play, and therefore he sits in 3rd, only ahead of Rob Sharp based on result countback, with Sharp yet to score a win, but has scored many a podium now for Oris Racing, and that's why he's well and truly in the hunt. Ollie Carbadine sits in 5th, Oris Racing Yellow, 18 points behind, but he's in his own fight for 5th place, 2 points ahead of the boosted Motorsport pair as led by John Roberts, who is a further 2 ahead of teammate Lee Berridge. Then it's a further 2 points there to Heinz Mayer, and the theme of 2s continues to Duncan Rye, who sits in 9th for Golfing Motorsport. However, then we extend it to 8 points to Delta, and Kim Such rounds off your top 10. Head of Mark Johnson there based on result countback, with the Track Mouse Racing driver knowing he's got everything to do today, given he was the fastest driver over a single lap in Germany last time out. However, at the Nürburgring across the price tracker, it was in the race where all went absolutely cataclysmically wrong. He's 2 points ahead of Ryan Penny. And then we do have Paul Goffin, Eric Menenveld, and Gary Toole complete your top 15. And not to be forgotten about outside the top 15, Andy Marsden ahead of Giles Gardner, with Martin Kenyon, Mark Kent being your last drivers to have points to their names, and yet score any points this season, Colin Wynne and Stephen Burns. So that's how the Drivers' Championship stand. What about the Teams' Championship? Well, here in the teams, we can see that Chicane and Apex Missers, they are only ahead based on result count back due to number of wins versus Satellite Racing. It's 132 points apiece, with Regenta Sim Racing bringing up the rear in third place. The top two are really pulled away at this point. However, Regenta Sim Racing can get into the fight, but we have seen that Satellite Racing normally bring both of their drivers to each and every round, and both drivers have been absolutely able to score a huge haul of points, whereas Chicane and Apex Missers had much more varied mileage when it comes to their drivers and the points they've been able to bring home. Regenta Sim Racing as well, the defending champions in some respects. When you look to Taylor Adams, who is your Drivers' Champion from Season 6, well, they were not the Team's Champions from last season. However, it feels like they've got the accolade to try and go for the crown. The Team's Champions, of course, on the previous season being Altitude 3M Esports, who are not here this season. But right now, Regenta Sim Racing are the closest to a defending champion, if you will, and their third place right now is under threat from Fury Simsport, who are further 8 behind. RD Simsport complete your top 5, and it's SRM Yellow in 6th place, but look at that gap from the top 5 to 6th. It is a gap of 33 points. That really tells you the story there, as we have two sides to the Team Championship. Those who are fighting for the top 5 spots, and those who are fighting for 6th, with Winner or Bidit Racing in 7th, ahead of FTech Racing, and then Oris Racing Yellow and Master Talk complete your top 10, only ahead of Boosted Motorsport based on result countback, and then in 12th place, Axis Simsport ahead of SRM, with Oris Racing Red, SRM Black, and Full Tilt Motorsport completing the standings. So that's how the standings stand, but coming into this round, we've got some prizes to talk about, and here they are. And our round 5 medal winners, well, big congratulations firstly goes to your overall race winner, and that was Stuart Reynolds there, taking his first win of the season. An absolutely brilliant style, battling back and forth for Alex Gull, and the gap between the two of them in the end, less than 2 seconds at the finish line. It never went beyond that. As your AM class winner, his second win of the season now, added to his win at Le Mans, it's Dennis Van Beelen. Congratulations to Dennis. As your safest driver award, the only driver to do the race without picking up a single instant point is the cool, calm and consistent Axis Simsport driver of Chris Jennings. Well done to Chris. And as for your Move of the Race award, well, it goes to Guy Edwards, but you know what? Let's just go straight to how he got the Move of the Race, ladies and gentlemen. You're not going to believe it. And here we go. So as he's making his way then on the open lap through the Schumacher S, in front of him was John Bailiff. Now, many of you may remember what happened to Bailiff here, but you won't believe what it looked like from on board with Guy Edwards. It's coming up the corner, Bailiff gets it wrong, and Edwards just snatches it to the left at the last possible moment. Dodges Bailiff, and as he made his way for Advan Bogan curve, had one of the boosted motorsport cars dive up the inside, but held it off, and that is how he managed to take the Move of the Race. So a huge congratulations there to Guy Edwards for being under major pressure, not just to hold his ground, but also to take a place when another driver got it wrong, and indeed a huge Move of the Race there from our AM driver. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, in fact, I do believe our pro driver there, let me get that right. But with that, we must come on to our venue for today, because it is, of course, the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben's Grand Prix circuit, located near the town of Oschersleben in the district of Böde in the Saxony-Anhalt state of Germany. Well, huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track mats that come with it. 14 corners, or in terms of its mileage, this circuit spanning the best part of 2.29 miles. It's a relatively short circuit compared to some on this calendar. However, when it packs into its distance, it is an absolutely brilliant punch. Many of these corners, of course, very tricky to get right, given the fact they have very late apexes and they're highly extended, and the direction changes only add complexity. Now, we're not going to repeat what John Clennon had to say, the BTCC legend turned commentator in the 90s, with regards to the original design of the opening corner here, which was a 90-degree left-hander, but thankfully, we're not using that corner today. Instead, we're using the much more modern sweeping bend of turn 1 into 2, which will see our drives make their way from left into right through Hotel Corner and in towards Hesserode at turn number 3. Plenty of camber at that corner. As they exit the way out, it will be into the triple left of turns 4, 5 and 6, for them to snatch their cars into the right-hander at turn number 7, with turns 6 and 7 being a much faster flying version of turns 1 and 2, and it's all the way out to McDonald's through the chicane of 8 and 9 and through the off-camber right-hander at turn number 10, before they come down towards Shell Curve and Anman Curve at turns 11 and 12, and then it will be Bauer Curve at turn number 13 that gives way to Zeppelin Curve at turn 14, and they'll make the way to that finish line. It's a complete lap or do it all over again. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we need to make a way to quickly remind you of the rules, which are as follows. Now, drivers are running a fixed setup for this series, as always, with fuel loads restricted to 37%. Qualifying-wise, we'll see an open qualify format being used, which puts all the drivers out of the circuit together, and they'll have a certain number of laps and amount of time to get the job done. As for our race, it shall commence via a double-file rolling start, as the tradition of GT4 racing here at Sim Racing Magazine. Will there be no mandatory pit stop requirements? Our drivers have to choose when they come into the pits and what they do in the pit lane. As for fast repairs, they do have one available should they need to use it, and the only other reason we may see a driver come into the pit lane is because they picked up a drive-through penalty, and that's if they pick up 18 or more instant points. Should they get to 25, they will be disqualified. We hope not to see that, and all race stewarding meanwhile shall be conducted post-race. But I can tell you one thing, our stewards have had a relatively easy time this season. There's been a couple of incidents early on, but not too many. That's what we love to hear, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way then back to circuit side, and as the cloud gradually thickens slightly over the circuit here, we do have rather pleasant conditions. We're not expecting any rain on the cards today, and it's time to go into qualifying. But who is going to be on pole? Let's find out. So as qualifying gets underway, the circuit will fill rather quickly as 15 minutes ticks down very fast. Indeed, it goes 1 second per second, but to our drivers, it will feel as though that time is running out at a rather quick rate. And as they all make their way on down, it's a big scramble here as Gary talking. Oh, goodness me! Car into the barrier there before it even leaves the pit lane. That was one of the Regenta Sim Racing cars. That has to park up there. It's going to tow back to the pits, and I couldn't quite see who that was, but that was a nasty moment there. I believe Matt Slate has picked up a yellow flag on pit exit. That would be for speeding on the pit exit. He's got away with that, but my good lord, whoever that was who tapped the wall, I think it was the other Regenta Sim Racing car, which would have been none other than Taylor Adams. Well, both drivers then making their way through, but Taylor Adams, the defending champion, having a bit of a brush with the wall, and he's been able to get out better this time around. But that's not the way you want to see your qualifying session start, goodness me. But as they all headed around here, and we say hello there to Simon Bird in the YouTube chat, who's cheering on none other than Heinz Mayer. He's definitely been one of the fan favourites this season, has Heinz, albeit he decides to sit in the pit lane at the moment. Is all okay in the car with Heinz there for Oris Racing Yellow? Let's listen in. And he gets it going. Then I think he's just decided to let everybody else go out there. And I think for Heinz, he wants a little bit of breathing room on circuit. He's not being antisocial, although he is practicing social distancing in a motorsport trend here. But the idea is he wants clear track. He wants plenty of space, not to worry about stepping on another driver's toes. And that very nicely then segues us on to what we want to talk about next, which is qualifying. What can you expect in qualifying? Well, the aim of the game in the qualifying session here at Oschersleben is to qualify well. And that sounds very obvious when you think of any motor racing event, in the fact that you always want to be at the very front. But here at Oschersleben, you really do need to qualify well. Overtaking around here is not easy. It's not impossible, and you will notice that the average width for this circuit is approximately 10 metres around the entirety of the lap. Now you translate that into the width for these cars. Each of these GT4 machines on average is somewhere in the region of about 2 to 2.25 metres in width. So it means you can fit the best part of 3 to 4 cars side by side if you want to pack out the circuit. However, the problem is around here, the fact there's only really one optimal line for each and every corner. So if you are going to attack, you need to be bold under braking. You need to be very forceful with your overtakes, and that in turn does mean that overtaking around here costs a lot of time, but it also requires you to have a significant pace advantage on the car in front. Or in other words, you've got to pressure your rival into a mistake, or really feel as though you've got the best part of 2 to 3 tenths in the bag and you can show it. As one of my drivers there gets it very wrong in their Porsche Cayman, and then just about keeps it together. I couldn't quite see who that was at the time, but they definitely almost made a complete ham sandwich in the opening 2 quarters. But with that sweeping entry, you really are encouraged to carry a lot more speed compared to what you would normally, and that was Jake Cranstone, in fact, the Masters of Talk, demonstrating how not to do turn number 1. It's very easy to get wrong. As Cranstone makes way along, he'll burn his slow down, and with that, he will release the Ford Mustang in front of him. And, well, that's going to mean there's going to be a little bit of breathing room between the 2 cars there as the Goldwing Motorsport machine makes its way onwards. But as it does, and that being in the hands of none other than Duncan Rye, well, meanwhile, we look to Gary Tull, and, well, he's coming towards the end of what will be his first flying lap. He's going to be the very first driver making his way across that line. Alex Gull will be the first to cross the line, and he will set the benchmark at 1 minute 30.777, and Tull sets the AM benchmark at a 1 minute 31.82. 2-2. And therefore, as they come through, well, right now, these drivers all trying to see exactly where the pace is. There's plenty of time out there to get it right, and nobody's going to be absolutely nailing the qualifying lap from the outset here. We don't have that hot of a track temperature today. Indeed, I believe when we look to the weather there on the right-hand side of your screen, what we can see is we've got a track temperature of 19 degrees centigrade and an ambient of 18 degrees centigrade. A very high humidity, however. But what this does mean is that this circuit is not that warm, and therefore our drivers will be encouraged to push. There's quite a bit of wind blowing as well, the best part of 7 to 8 miles an hour. That will push the car around a little bit, particularly through these corners, but there is plenty of time out there should our drivers want to grab it. But as they make the way around, we do say hello there to Stephen Codman, 9915, who a big fan there of none other than Mark Johnson. And well, everyone's wondering what exactly happened to Mark Johnson at the end of his race. It was a disaster in the pit lane, came in for his second stop, and the team put a full set of tyres on the car, which wasn't required. But it was even worse than that. They put a full set of wet tyres on the car. There was a complete mix-up in the pit lane, and therefore for Trackmouse Racing it was a disaster, and really what was a win, a guaranteed win or a glued-on win, that suddenly was absolutely stripped out the hands of the number 44 McLaren driver. And indeed a very sad day for the team, knowing that what was looking to be perfection suddenly turned into a race of nightmares. But thankfully he's got 3 more opportunities and he can still keep himself in the championship hunt, but he's going to need perfection from this point onwards if he wants to stay alive in the hunt, as he gets a little bit too quick there into the second part of triple left at turns 4, 5 and 6. Turn 5 catching him out, and Mark Johnson bringing it back together. That's not the way he wanted it to go whatsoever, but an easy mistake to make, and he won't be wanting to make that mistake again anytime soon. But we will see what's to come for Johnson, indeed for all of them, as more lap time started to come on the board, and the Fury Simsport driver of Stuart Reynolds here in the Mercedes AMG, well, now he's up the ante. He's 1/10 off the back of Alex Gall, who continues to go the fastest of everybody. And well, we owe you an on-board lap very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, and what better way to do so than to look to one driver who's made his way towards one, as in fact he finds a bit of traffic in front of him. This is Nils Corr in the BMW, but right in front of him there is number 86 that he gives a little tap on the rear, and that's the 86 of Rob Sharp. And Nils Corr will make his way on past, Sharp will step aside, and we jump aboard here with the BMW driver for a moment as he cuts across very gradually, and Sharp releases him to go onto a flying lap. So breaking his way into turns 1 and 2 here. Trail breaking down to 4th gear, then all the way down to what will be 3rd gear as he finally makes the apex at turn number 2. But notice the early upshift there into 4th. That's so he can get the power down as he pushes the car out the corner, uses all the road width from the exit curb, and now into Hasser Road at turn number 3. Braking at the marshal's post on the right hand side and then carrying as much speed as possible. And as he makes his way out of the bend, now flat out he'll go all the way up to turn number 4. But he's got to pick his entry point. There's no real brake markers here. This is done on muscle memory as he chucks the car in, drops the gear, slight tab of the brake to get the nose pitched forward, and now through turn number 5 and into 6 on the throttle and then off of it, hard onto the brakes, and now trailing off here, letting the car roll slightly deep before coming back towards the apex of turn number 7. A lovely run, and now into the McDonald's chicane. Right into the left he goes, he'll straight line this as much as possible, then snap the car to left to pull it to the right through McDonald's bend at turn number 10. Now as he makes his way out of the corner, it's onto the back stretch, but it's only a short run here, as he picks up a distant tow off the car up the road of Kim Such, and now into the braking zone for the right into left sequence of turns 11 and 12. Medium speed apexes here, holds 4th gear rather than going to 3rd, so that way he gets better traction out the corner. Now over to the left hand side to open up turn number 13, and as he does so, a very easy corner to carry too much speed into, but not so for Nils Corr, and hard on the brakes there through Zeppelin curve as he makes his way out to the final corner. Well, it hasn't been a perfect lap, there's been a couple of little scrappy moments, but for Nils Corr in general, his middle sector was his strongest so far. What about his final sector, I hear you ask? Yes, it's a personal best, and he jumps all the way up to 4th place there, and well, good lap overall, but 6.5 tenths off the overall pole time. But you could see some points there, particularly in the opening sector where his corner exits, using all the width of the road, however having the car fall onto the exit curb. It's what you want to do, but a little bit of oversteer on those corner exits just holding it back. But now he's got the problem, he's found some traffic in front of him, and I think for Nils at this point, he might need to back off slightly to give himself the room, unless he can pull off some magic here. But normally if you find another car directly in front of you and you're over the back of it, it's going to compromise your qualifying lap. And that's not to say that Kim Such is causing problems here. If anything, the Oris Digital Racing Red driver is doing exactly what he's entitled to do, which is if he's on a valid qualifying lap, which he has not spoiled in any way or disallowed through track limits, he is allowed to hold his line, and the drivers behind him as they queue up have to sit there. They can force their way past if they want to. They have to do it as if it was a racing overtake, but they've got to do it in a way where they're not compromising the lap of the lead car. That's the difference in the rule set in qualifying, in the fact that if you are going to overtake somebody, You've got to get it so right that you do not compromise the driver in front. Otherwise, they have the right to take you to the stewards and say that this driver essentially compromised by qualifying lap, and it can very easily lead to a penalty, even if it's a very light one. It's the last thing you want. So as they come towards the end of this turn of the circuit, it does look as though Nils Corr backs off a little bit there as Kim Such heads towards the line. He is on a personal best in sectors 1 and 2. He's currently 11th of your AM drivers. But what's it going to be as he crosses the timeline here? Straight lines throughout the final quarter, and therefore he moves up to 19th. Good on him to do so, and that's a 1 minute 32.4. A lovely lap there, and puts him firmly into 9th place, just off of the heels of Rob Sharp. But with that, we come back to the fastest man on circuit right now for Apex and Chicane Missers. He misses his exit there, runs a bit wide. Alex Goal, however, that does not invalidate the lap yet. I can imagine, however, if he keeps doing that, it will do, as he also takes a little bit of gravel with him. He'll have one more lap available to him here. He's going to go full attack for now, and he might cool it down a little bit, as he does put another personal best in there, so it wasn't a loud lap, and it was a 30.114. A lovely lap there for Gal, and it moves his advantage to 3 tenths now over RD Supersport's Matias Penttilä, who has come back, and it's great to see him back here today. He had to miss last round due to personal circumstances. He was massively missed by everybody on the grid, including his main championship rival from Fury Supersport of Stuart Reynolds, who you see here. They have quite the rivalry between the two of them right now. It's a very professional rivalry, it must be said. They're friends off the circuit, but fierce rivals on the circuit. But they've definitely been in the two Mercedes AMG machines. The two drivers who, I think, if they both weren't locking horns with each other, will be taking the fight to Alex Goal round after round. Because they've been locking horns so much, it's actually meant that Goal's been able to get a bit of a free pass on them. However, it looks like today Alex Goal may just have the pace in turn to be able to get the free pass without worrying. And we have seen Reynolds get the better of Penttilä all the way back at Circuit Zandvoort in round number 4. Whereas in round number 2, it was the opposite way round, and it was Penttilä who was able to get the advantage of Reynolds at Donington Park. And Alex Goal in both situations, as he's doing so today, was just one step ahead in both races. But Nils Corr does improve off camera to a 30.563. He's now 1.5 tenths off of Reynolds, so the noose is tightening at the top, and therefore it's looking as though right now it's going to be a question mark of who's going to be second on the front row of the grid, because Goal is 3 tenths faster. He's not the fastest on this lap. In fact, this is a bit more of a cool-down lap. But he's getting ready to attack it again, but he is building up. But whilst we sing his praises, we need to sing the praises of your AM Championship leader, of John Bailiff. Here he is for Win It or Bid It Racing. And right now, if we had to answer the question that his team name suggests, he is winning it right now. He's not binning it because he is your provisional and fastest driver. He's only 7 tenths off the overall pole time as well, as he sits at 31.493. But right now, Bailiff is absolutely hauling out there, and he is faster than Mark Johnson by the best part of almost 2 tenths. As Bailiff picks up a yellow flag, that will be for track limits at turn number 1. He has cut the corner, and the yellow flag means in the time tower he has to serve a slowdown penalty. That's awarded by iRacing. It is an automated time penalty, and he has to serve it within a defined period of time, otherwise it gets upgraded in race conditions to a black flag, which will be for what will be a stop and go penalty in the pit lane. So John Bailiff right now adheres to the yellow flag, and as he brings himself back up to speed, he'll know that he's got another chance or two, because we have 3 minutes left on the clock. Jake Cranstone, meanwhile, for Masters of Talk, he promotes himself to 6th for the 30.879. Wants to get ahead of Bailiff if he can. However, then he's got to find 3.5 tenths to get to Nils Corr. That's not going to be easy. So Cranstone right now really finds himself in the second pack of the pro drivers. The top 4 of pros have made the way clear. John Bailiff seems to be the stopgap in the AM class between them, and it's Ben Idris Abdullahi who's right behind Cranstone by only a tenth. But look at Idris Abdullahi and Mark Johnson, and what you'll find is they both have very close lap times, only separated by 1,000th. And then between Johnson and Taylor Adams, there's nothing. Down to the 1,000th, they are identical laps. So how do we tell who's going to be ahead of the other? It's based on who set the lap first, which Mark Johnson did, and then Adams followed suit. So Johnson right now, the second fastest is the AM drivers, 8th overall, and Bailiff and Johnson really in a bit of a class of their own. Although Gary Toole, he would like to squeeze his way into that top 10 if he can. He is currently 22 thousandths off of Simon Povey. The 2 Porsche drivers there putting on a good effort. And well, we're definitely seeing a bit of car variety here inside the top 10. We do have 2 McLarens, we have 3 Mercedes, we have 2 Porsches, we also have 2 BMWs and 1 Ford Mustang. So we have got all 5 of our GT4 machines that are here today. Of course, we are missing the 6th one of the Aston Martin. Nobody has decided to bring this to this round. Indeed, all the Aston Martin drivers who did sign up with the Aston Martin are not on the grid currently, but we are definitely seeing car variety be a theme, as Guy Edwards now makes it 2 Ford Mustangs inside the top 10 as he pushes one of the Porsches out of Simon Povey. So Edwards here has found some time. However, has he run out of time now to find? Because he has got 1.5 minutes or so left. So he's got this lap plus one more if he pushes it. But I can imagine Edwards here might have given it everything to get that lap together, that 31.02. And the 55 driver here, if he's got any more in that Ford Mustang, well, he's definitely not revealing it. And we are expecting the Mustang to struggle a little bit here because it is the straight line beast. However, one of the downsides of the Mustang is it's a very heavy car and it's a very understeer native car in terms of the fact it wants to go into the corners very aggressively rather than have the natural rotation. It leans on the front and therefore it's going to be a hard car to get around these lower speed corners compared to the likes of the Porsche 718 Cayman, which is the cornering car. But you do need a bit of straight line speed and acceleration here, which is why we are seeing the McLarens do very well and really matching and not outpacing the Porsches, and the BMW M4s can't be understated on the Mercedes as they are a bit of a middle ground when it comes to cornering versus power. But it also comes down to a degree to the driver who's piloting the car, and that's exactly what Alex Corr is demonstrating here. That's right now the McLaren driver, who of course has mentioned earlier on this season in post-round interviews at certain points he has questioned his choice in the McLaren, but as of Zandvoort, it definitely demonstrated his choice in the McLaren for this season was the right choice. Well, he's demonstrating once again what this McLaren could do, even if he hasn't really improved since we've last seen him, when Matias Penttilä and Stuart Reynolds closing the gap a little bit. Particularly Matias Penttilä, who has now got to win 2 attempts. Jake Cranstone off camera has just moved to 5th ahead of Bailiff at what is a 1 minute 30.684. So he pipped Bailiff by a tenth and a bit. Bailiff still your provisional and pole sitter in 6th place. But notice again the fact that we do have the majority of the Anfield all congregated from 14th downwards as the clock is about to strike 15 minutes, and there we go, it goes to 0. So with that, Kim Such will be the first driver to cross the line and take his checkered flag. As he doesn't improve at 21st, so in the end it hasn't quite worked out for him. Meanwhile, as Duncan Rye calls on down, just going for our camera, here's Heinz Mann to the pit lane. So it's not quite been the qualifying session that Oris Digital Racing have wanted. May will be starting 7th, the highest in the M class, 17th overall. We've still got a few more drivers to come across that timing line, including, I do believe, none other than John Bailiff here as he ducks to the pits. He absolutely throws the car into the pit lane there. And I think he realises it's not enough. He was on a purple best lap in the AM class, but the middle sector was a great one, and his final sector was absolutely abhorrent. So he's had to throw that in the bin. Have we got anybody else heading around? We've got Lee Berridge out there, I believe, and Lee right now really struggling here for Boosted Motorsport. In fact, this is the worst qualifying performance we've seen from him all season. 23rd currently. He jumps to 21st right at the end of the 32.262, but this is not normal for Lee, and we can tell that completely misses braking zone and lets the car in the end wobble sideways. And I think Lee right now is probably putting his hands on the steering wheel and thinking, what on earth was that, Lee? Well, only he's going to be able to know, as Rob Sharp right now, he calls himself down here. And the Abreuris racing driver currently chasing another podium this season. When he's on his final lap, will he put it together? He's had a really good first sector. His middle sector has matched his previous best. Oh, he gets it wrong at the final corner, and Sharp throws that lap away. And what was looking to be a potential shot of 4th place in AM versus Chris Jennings is not to be. So that is qualified complete, ladies and gentlemen. And it is Alex Corr who takes another pole position for this season. I do believe now his 4th pole position of the season in the McLaren 570 GT4 for the Pro and overall category. He'll be joined on the front row by Matias Penttilä for RD Sim Sport, and then we will see in 6th place it'll be your AM pole sitter and 2-time winner and championship leader in the AM class of John Bailiff, with 3 places between him and 2nd place AM driver of Mark Johnson for Track Mouse Racing, who gets a shot at redemption here today to chase down a podium, if not the AM win. And as for 3rd in the AM class, you'd look to 12th place, and then you'll find the Porsche 718 Cayman of Gary Toole, who has put together a brilliant qualifying performance. But the circuit falls silent for a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, and so do we in the commentary booth as we get ready to make our way to the grid. So all our drivers make the way onto the grid, and this is how they'll line up for round number 6 of Season 7 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, sponsored by Oris Digital. On pole position is Alex Corr, with a brilliant pole lap there for chicane and apex missers. He was able to put himself on pole by the best part of 2 attempts, but behind the Frenchman was the flying Finn of Matias Penttilä, the RD Simsport driver there, delivering a great lap on his return to the grid after missing the previous round. Stuart Reynolds begins the day in 3rd place. He was a 10th behind at the end, and the Fury Simsport driver will be very glad to see his rival on the grid once again, and indeed it really is a love relationship that we've seen round after round. But will they be split by a menage a trois competitor of Nils Corr for Satellite Racing? And the German driver there qualifying behind the Briton, and he was just shy of 1.5 tenths behind. He starts in fourth, with Jake Cranstone in the end find a way to creep ahead of John Bailiff, and the Masters of Torque driver doing so to take fifth. The Briton being joined by his fellow countryman of Bailiff, who starts sixth overall, but more importantly for the winner of Bennett Racing driver, that is pole position, and the championship leader right now knowing he needs to shore up his points if he wants to keep himself in the lead of the championship with rounds remaining. And then we have Taylor Adams, who starts the day in 7th for Agenta Sim Racing. Great effort for the number 1 driver there, defending champion, but he was only ahead of Ben Idris Abdullahi in the end by tens of thousands. So in other words, it was identical laps, but the Agenta Sim Racing driver did the lap first. The Satellite Racing driver from France we are lined up in 8th, and then we do see second place AM driver of Mark Johnson for Trackmouse Racing taking 9th place on the grid. Guy Edwards begins the day in 10th place there, the privateer who's definitely put on a good display in qualifying today, and he'll need to move that Ford Mustang forward if he wants some big points, as otherwise he may have some pressure. Speaking of that pressure coming from behind, firstly it's F-Tech Racing's Simon Povey in the number 10, who looked very quick last time out at the Nürburgring, but here today has fallen back a little bit, but you never know what can happen over the race. We then do have Gary Toole for GST Racing starting in 12th place there, the 30 Ram drives, well done to Gary on that lap, one of his best of the season, and the 207 drivers then followed up by Matt Slate, who begins this one in 13th place. The Regenta Sim Racing driver struggling, whereas his teammate did well, and then we do have the AM field all the way through for the rest of the starting positions. Chris Jennings starts in 14th place there for Axis Sim Sports. 4th place once again. He's making a habit of qualifying 3rd or 4th in the AM class all the way through this season, but can he make his way back onto the podium? If not, Rob Sharp might be looking to steal the place off him, and the Aburis Racing driver definitely wants another 3rd place if he can. He's joined on the 8th row by Dennis Van Beelen, one of your winners in the AM class this season, a 2-time winner for Chicane and Apex Missers, but he'll be wondering where exactly went wrong in qualifying if he wants to get it together in the race. Heinz Mann begins this one in 17th place, the BMW M4 driver from South Africa for Oris Racing Yellow, where he's definitely one of the faster drivers where we get under race pace conditions, but I think he'll even be wondering what went wrong in qualifying to see him started a bit further back when he was looking strong in the early stages. However, he'll fret not because he was 26 thousandths behind Van Beelen, and he was the best part of a 10th ahead of Duncan Bry, who returns to the grid after a brief hiatus, but good to see the South African driver on the grid alongside his fellow countrymen. He begins this one in 18th place for Goldwyn Motorsport. Then we do have Ryan Penny beginning the day in 19th for Oris Racing Red with another strong qualifying showing, and the 99 trial we joined on the 10th row of the grid by Oliver Carwadine, who rounds off your top 20 for Oris Racing Yellow. But that's not all for the grid, ladies and gents, because we have on row number 11 Lee Berridge for Boosted Motorsport, perhaps the biggest casualty of qualifying when it comes to surprises. He's joined on that row by Kim Such, who begins this day in 22nd place, Oris Racing Red. And then on the penultimate spot of the grid, it is John Roberts, the other Boosted Motorsport driver who struggled in qualifying. And we have Andy Marston bringing up the rear in 24th place for Sim Racing Magazine Black. So 24 starters here today, ladies and gentlemen, and we are not too far away from going green flag racing for the 6th time this season. And indeed, this will be the final time for 2025 we do so. And what a way we're going to be seeing out a brilliant year of race here at Sim Racing Magazine. And as all the field tiptoes its way through the McDonald's curve, well, Alex Garl right now, as we jump aboard him briefly, he knows today he wants to end on a high. He wants to make sure he goes into the 3-week break with an early present, which is a win, and a championship leaders, which is extended. However, Matias Penttilä and Stuart Reynolds had their own ideas, but watch this man who starts from 4th. You're right on board with Satellite Race's Nils Corr. Can he surprise everybody, given the fact I think he felt as though there was more in the tank last time out in Germany at the Nürburgring? Well, he's back on home soil once again today, but will Oschersleben be the circuit that enables him to pick up a podium, or will he be led astray? Well, all that's aboard, ladies and gents. We are only moments away from finding out, as the field now bunches up very tightly behind the safety car, and it's to Alex Garl to take us to the green for 60 minutes of racing here in round 6 of season 7 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, brought to you on iRacing and sponsored by Oris Digital. And now to the final corner, and Alex Garl leaves it slightly late to go, but he picks it absolutely right, and look at the jump he gets. They're roaring away down towards turn 1, and as they do, Garl immediately putting at least 2 car lengths ahead of himself, and Matias Penttilä has got pressure of Reynolds up the inside, but knows it's now to the outside. The battle of the 2 Mercedes, they duke it out through the opening corner, roaring the way through. Further back, it's 2 by 2 as they all clear the open at apex. They survive it as Chris Jennings moves up the inside of Dennis Van Beelen. Van Beelen on the attack here as they now make the way in towards turn number 3. All the drives hard on the brakes here. Constantine leader affecting full flow. But look up the inside then, you'll see Idris Abdullahi trying to make the place on Guy Edwards. Abdullahi and also Edwards have both had strong starts here. They've made up places inside the top 10. As meanwhile, Mark Johnson's lost one place overall, but still holding second in AM. But we can see that Gary Tour a bit further behind is inching closer with Simon Povey acts as a referee between the two of them. Further back behind them, Duncan Bryant right over the heels of Heinz Mayer right now. They are where they started, but they're much closer together as they weave their way through turns 6 and 7. And all the field has safely made its way through the opening few corners. Lee Berridge has had a bit of a slow start as Andy Marsden is ahead of him at the moment. So those two trying to play catch up. But from them, we look all the way back to the front. Look at this. Goal's already breaking away, but the fight for second. Penttilä and Reynolds right now absolutely boxing gloves on here, but they're only exchanging jabs right now. They're keeping it nice and clean. That's what we love to see as they make the way through turns 11 and 12. But Goal's going to be given all the space to run away with this as Bailiff gets in. Oh, there's a car round. I believe that's Cranstone. Cranstone's gone round. I don't know where he is in all of this, but he's pointing in the wrong direction. That's not normal. He lets the car roll backwards there and gets it stopped in time. And well, for Cranstone, it's all gone wrong and it puts him all the way to the back of the field. But that's a surprise and not a welcome one. We'll need a replay of that. But after one lap of racing, Alex Goal leads ahead of Matias Penttilä, who's 1.1 seconds behind. Stuart Reynolds sits in third. Nils Corr is fourth. Then we have John Bailiff and leader in fifth. Ahead of Ben Idris Abdullahi, sixth. Guy Edwards is seventh. It's Taylor Adams in 8th place, ahead of Mark Johnson. Simon Povey rounded off your top 10 there as meanwhile Gary Tour under pressure from Matt Slade. Slade also under pressure from Chris Jennings. I think Jennings there with so much enthusiasm into turns 1 and 2. When he scuppered his line has actually brought Dennis Van Beelen right in behind him here. So the Anfield very tight right now. And the problem is they are all queuing up behind Matt Slade, who is in turn having to queue up behind Tour and Povey. So we've got a long train of cars here and nobody wants to fight right now. And I wonder whether everyone's thinking about the bigger picture strategy here today. And therefore we could see quite a lot of fuel saving gone on these opening stints. And if you are able to fuel save, you normally are able to add at least 1 to 2 laps onto your opening stint. But Dennis Van Beelen here, he didn't get the memo about fuel saving. You could see the body language of the car there coming through turn 5 into 6 was body language of, I need to carry the speed, I need to push Chris Jennings in front of me. Because Van Beelen, I think he knows he didn't qualify as well as he wanted to. He has gained 2 places overall, 1 in class since the start of the race. But right now, the man who's picked up 2 wins this season, I think there's a lot of belief inside him that he can make himself a 3-time winner in the AM class and take the control of this AM championship, because there is so much between the top 4. Only 6 points between all of them, but it's all the differences in their results that are making the difference right now. And Van Beelen really wants to try and take the reins here, but he falls back from Jennings there, and Rob Sharp is right behind him as we look off the rear of the Ford Mustang. You can see in turn that Sharp and Mayer are very close together, and well, they definitely work closely together as part of the organising committee for Sim Racing Magazine. But somebody's got it wrong at the rear of the picture. Who's that? Who's gone round? That's Ryan Penny. Penny's gone spinning out the final corner. He gets it back together, but that's another instant there, and it seems like at the end of every lap we're having a big turn at the moment. Speaking of a turn of fortune, Alex Goal's picked up a slowdown at turn number 1. He is going to serve it shortly, and Matias Penttilä and Stuart Reynolds will close up. Nils Corr will get close, so Goal right now cost himself time, and perhaps the demons of the Nürburgring are coming back to Goal. He was in a very commanding position early on in the race until a mistake cost him, and it was after the first pit stop. A tiny little slip on the tyre at turn number 3 saw Stuart Reynolds go up the inside, and that was it. Reynolds then took the lead of the race. They were never further apart than the second, excluding when they pitted on alternative laps. But the point was Reynolds got ahead, and that was the story. And Alex Goal right now doesn't need minor mistakes to catch him out here. So he's got to keep his head down and make sure he doesn't make those errors. And to be fair, we can count on literally just 2 fingers now the mistakes that we have spotted of Alex Goal this season. He's only made 2, and well, one of them was absolutely punishing. It cost him a win, and so far today, well, that one minor mistake there has brought him back into the fold when he was 1.2 seconds clear. So we'll have to wait and see what else is to come. But from him, we look to Jennings versus Van Beelen, and again the Mercedes driver absolutely being breathed all over by Dennis Van Beelen, and the Ford Mustang driver here is pushing Jennings so hard. Jennings, to be fair, shows no signs of fear in these situations. He's just able to keep it together as Duncan Bryant, that's a front bumper missing off the Ford Mustang. The Goldwing Motorsport car has gone around. That's the toe to the pits as well. We're going to need a replay of that, but Duncan Bryant has fallen foul there. I believe that's at turns 11 through to 12. I suspect he's perhaps carried a bit too much speed out of 12, and the car's got around on him, unless he's been pushed around. You never know, to be fair. And not like to say we've got any bad actors on the grid, but mistakes could happen, particularly if a driver goes wide and somebody comes in a little bit too hot behind them. It's very easy to do as Kim Such there almost turns himself into a rallycross car as he makes way through turn number 2. However, gets it together, takes a very deep line, which is a valid line if you're trying to make a switchback overtake up to 3. But there I think Kim Such has carried a bit too much momentum. But as he settles it down and the battling settles down for a brief moment, we get an opportunity to take a look back at what exactly happened at the start of the race, particularly to none other, firstly to Lee Berridge. So this was Lee Berridge down into turn number 1 on the opening lap. You'll see the boosted motorsport car. They're trying to go around the outside of the 99 of Penny. Bit of contact there by looks of things. Or did Berridge just get it wrong of his own accord? Do we have a better camera angle? Either way, Berridge was ejected. And here was the alternative camera angle. Not very helpful, to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. And in the end, well, Berridge made his way into the corner, and, well, we only catch the tail end of it there, so the camera's not been too helpful. But Berridge then might have been in contact with Penny, but if so, I suspect they'll be treated as a racing instant. Meanwhile, this happened to Guy Edwards. This was Edwards making his way in towards turns 11 and 12 on the opening lap. Takes a lot of apex curve initially, does Idris Abdullahi in front of him. But what about Edwards? Oh, well, there was none other than Cranstone going around, so Edwards had to take it to the grass to escape the wayward Porsche. But what happened to Cranstone, I hear you ask? Well, here's a replay to explain that on board with him. In fact, this is with Guy Edwards. We're seeing Cranstone there get it wrong, but we want to see what happened to Cranstone there. And we are going to get that replay now. Here we are. So Cranstone had already got it wrong through the chicane and then took a cut there at turn number 12, bounced off of the apex curb, and the car just completely snapped round, and the suspension would have hit its bump stops, and that's what will send the car spinning on round. So for Jake Cranstone, a nasty moment there, but a very easy mistake to make. We had this for Ryan Penny on lap number 2. This was coming out the final corner when it all went wrong for Penny. So out to the right-hander, built up the speed, too much steering lock, and the rear went round of its own volition. So Penny there, a little bit too eager to make some progress. And then we had this for Duncan Mariah a lap later on lap number 3. So into turns 11 and 12 he went. He caught out Cranstone, but for Mariah, a bit too much speed through turn 11, got the car back together, did the same through 12, and at that point, when you go onto the exit curb, you are going nowhere but around with the rear lets go, and well, the car bounced its way to the outer wall, and such was the story there for Duncan Mariah. So back to your racing we come, ladies and gentlemen. So a quick look back, of course, at the major instance of the opening 3 laps. But as we come back to your leaders, well, Alex Garl has re-established a degree of a lead by 7/10 over Penttilä, with Reynolds still with him. Stuart Reynolds holds the accolade of the fastest lap currently. But these drivers will keep pushing each other onwards. Nils Corr is also there. And this is good to see. Corr's in this today. A little bit more closely than he was last time out, albeit keeping in mind he was able to stay in the draft for an extended period of time at the Nürburgring until he lost it, and then he started to fall away. It might be a similar story here today, we will see, because the one advantage of being in the draft is you do pick up the best part of 2 to 3 attempts on the long straights, depending on how long the straight is and your relative exit speed compared to the car in front, but you also do have a little bit of an opportunity to potentially fuel save. The draft of these GT4s, these road cars, 80% road car, 20% race car if you will, so road cars turn race car, they do punch a nice big hole in the air, and that enables them to pick up a lot of momentum. But speaking of momentum, that's Mark Johnson there picking on Taylor Adams for a move. He's going to the inside there of the defending overall champion, and Johnson makes it count for 8th place there. I think Adams might be playing it a bit conservatively and thinking about the longer term race, but Johnson right now, he's got the bit between his teeth as the McLaren driver, whereas he rakes his way up towards the McDonald chicane. Some would argue that I think Johnson is wondering, can he get close enough to John Bailiff? Well, Bailiff is 5.5 seconds ahead, so theoretically at the moment you would think no. However, understandably, I think Johnson's not going to take no for an answer. But behind, Chris Jennings and Van Beelen, they're still together as Jennings sits behind the other Agenta Sim race machine of Matt Slade. So Mercedes and Mercedes followed by Ford Mustang. The only problem is right now for Jennings is as much as he's been able to give himself some breathing room to Van Beelen, I think this might be the calm before the proverbial storm. Because Van Beelen, I think he's building himself up to something here as we come towards the end of the opening 10 minutes. But what is the question? And the answer is, well, not that, going to the gravel as they all do step a little bit wide. And that's where all these drivers now are starting to feel that the tyres are warmed up and they can start to push a little bit harder as they make the way onto the next tour of the circuit. Ryan Penny further behind, he's catched up to the back of Andy Marsden, and well, keep in mind, of course, it all went wrong for Jake Cranstone on the opening lap. Cranstone has since retired the car due to damage picked up. That's very unfortunate, so we did lose Cranstone as a result of his altercation through turns 11 and 12. But Duncan Ryan, meanwhile, is back out there, and he has fallen a lap down effectively now, but it's good to see him back out there, and you never know what can happen until the finish line, of course. That's the thing with these races being 60 minutes in length. It only takes one small error, whether it's at the start or the end, but you can always recover from it if you do something wrong at the start. And Penny right now looking for a move on Marston. Is he going to be able to find it? And as they head in towards turn number 3, you can see up there the Sim Racing Magazine machine going to the outside. Penny's going to look up the inside. He's going to get close to the apex. Penny then gets his elbows out and does make the move. That's not 100% clean, but to be fair, they do have a bit of a rub, but I think they've enjoyed the race there, as now Marston tucks in behind and Penny starts to pull away. So Ryan Penny up to 12th in Am. Meanwhile, back to the fight for 4th in Am we go, and Jennings and Van Beelen a lot closer this time, with Rob Sharp watching from behind. And Sharp right now thinking, how do I get involved in this, as he weaves his way into turns 11 and 12. Well, I think the main problem he has here is the fact he needs to just get a little bit closer to the game on the straights and enable himself to save some fuel. If he can do that in the Porsche, he will be able to do some leapfrog work in the pit lane, or the undercut strut, the overcut, depending on whether he comes in before or after his rivals. That's where he needs to be. But the problem is he's losing time through the middle and final sector. It does seem as though Jennings Van Beelen have found a bit more pace. That backstretch will have helped them, but also the fact that we'd expect the Porsche to be on parity with them typically. But Sharp definitely not in a happy place with the Oschersleben circuit right now, and I would imagine it might be because of the complexities of this circuit. It is not an easy one to get right. But speaking of a driver getting things right, we look back to the fight for second, and Penttilä versus Reynolds continues to go another lap. And, well, we can see that Alex Gold gradually inching that gap open at the lead, now up to 9/10 on average over the lap's distance. Penttilä and Reynolds, they are still together, and Nils Corr is watching here. He really does have the spectator view in that BMW M4. And understandably, I think he doesn't want to do too much to antagonise the drivers in front. He just wants to be there in case they both make a mistake and he can pick up the collective pieces. And that would be the ideal dream, but it very normally is far from that way in terms of how it works out. But John Bailiff, 6 seconds behind, he is leading the AM class with Ben Idris Abdullahi and Guy Edwards, 2 pro drivers for close company behind. And the 2 Ford Mustang drivers here are looking at the rear of that BMW and wondering how is he doing it. As is Mark Johnson in his McLaren 570S, who seconds the AMs in 8th, breaking away from Taylor Adams very gradually. Last lap, he pulled a 10th over Taylor Adams, and that goes to show you the fact that Johnson right now is definitely turning up the pace. Just got to be careful not turning it up too high here. It may be the situation whereby he hits his limit, and what do you do when you hit your limit? When you try pushing beyond it, that's normally when the mistakes can happen, or you suddenly have a revelation as a racing driver and find even more time. But one driver we haven't really talked about recently is Gary Toole, 3rd place AM driver. Started in 12th place overall. He's moved up to 11th as a result of Jake Cranstone's opening lap incident. But the important thing is the fact that he's still holding that 3rd position quite happily, with Matt Slate acting as the buffer between himself and the rest of the AM field. But Christian Jensen and Dennis Van Beelen are not too far behind, nor is Sharp and Mayer. Now, what's very interesting here, and we do know, of course, that whilst these drivers are in different teams, sometimes they do talk to each other in the practice sessions, in the build-up days. I would imagine that both Rob Sharp and Heinz Mayer right now, they're both thinking the same thing, which is, why would we fight each other for 6th when the battle in front of us is only going to build up and we can both just sit within arm's reach of this? And Van Beelen right now, he definitely is still trying to find a way to nip his way past Jennings as we ride aboard the 69. So he comes in towards the chicane this time, right into left. Once again, lovely line through there. They have to be very confident with their line. Get it wrong, they'll pick up a slowdown penalty, and they have to serve it down this back stretch. Van Beelen here looking to the inside. Jennings goes defensive. So Van Beelen here trying to get into Jennings' head and say, am I going to do it? Am I going to lunge you? And right now, Chris Jennings definitely taking the bait slightly here. I think Jennings as well does have his own problem at trying to see beyond the front of his Mercedes, and also the fact he's got Matt Slate only 3/10 in front of him. So I think Jennings just as much coming off Van Beelen as he is trying to sight the corner. And, well, we'll show you very shortly on board what it looks like from the onboard perspective of that Mercedes, with its very long bonnet to accommodate a 6.3 litre V8 engine. I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, the cowling of that engine over the front is very long, and it actually reduces driver visibility of corners. And when you add a car in front of it as well, it only gets harder. But meanwhile, speaking of things getting harder here, it's going to be harder for some than others, as Idris Abdullahi tries to defend his position for 6th place overall versus Guy Edwards, who goes up the inside of him into triple left. And in the end, Guy Edwards makes the move count, and the satellite racing driver will fall back a position, as meanwhile now Guy Edwards moving onwards. I think he's definitely found a little bit of momentum. Sparks flying from the undertray there of that Mustang and roaring the way onto the back stretch. All right, now Idris Abdullahi not finding a counter-attack here. I think the patience is going to have to build. But as his patience builds up, we meanwhile take a look back at a move made by John Roberts on Lee Berridge. Well, this was Roberts making his way into turns 1 and 2, and Berejiklian gets it wrong under brake, and it goes straight onto the grass. So that's how Roberts made his way through. So the boosted motorsport drivers right now will exchange in places, but definitely not where they want to be, being 19th and 20th overall, or 10th and 11th in the AM class. This has not been a happy day so far, and we hope to see things turn around before the day is done, because if not, it could definitely be a race where the championship charges are going to become undone. But with 15 minutes complete, we've still got another 45 minutes or so to go, including the final lap. And we're definitely now starting to head towards the opening pit stop territory here. We have seen all season that we typically had two stop races. Let's get our mathematics correct. 3 stints is what I meant to say. And those pit stops come in around 18 to 22 minutes into the race initially. Now that depends on fuel saving and whether a driver goes to the undercut or the overcut. The average point is, of course, you want to go into the pits 20 minutes into the race, so you can do it again at 40 minutes into the race. But at some circuits where fuel usage is perhaps a little bit less, or a lot of fuel saving is possible, what you do find is the opening stint can be extended and the middle stint can be extended even more on a new full fuel tank, and it means the final stint is a bit shorter. So that's always a bit of a play for our drivers. As Jennings right now, oh goodness me, he has got Van Beelen even closer this time as they come out to turn 7. Now, the Axis Sports drivers here doing a very good job of just making sure Van Beelen never gets quite close enough to think about the lunge. He will have relied a little bit on Matt Slate's own Mercedes in front, giving him a bit of a tow down the straights, just to give him that confidence. We know this Ford Mustang is the strongest once it gets to full 5th and 6th gear. It just has a bit more straight line speed in the upper echelon of the gear ranges. Intriguingly enough, the Mercedes matches it down at the lower end in 2nd and 3rd, as does the BMW, and it's the McLaren that has proven to be a little bit stronger than all of them with regards to straight line acceleration in the lower gears. So circuit-wise, it does mean that all these cars can be very close at acceleration. The only real exception being the Porsche Cayman that doesn't quite have the straight line speed. It has the corner speed, which enables it to carry a bit more momentum out the corners. But in acceleration terms, it is a bit weaker. But that's the balance of performance for you. And we have had some slight tweaks to the balance of performance with the fact we've now moved into the 2026 Season 1 iRacing build. And from what I've been able to hear down the paddock, the one thing that has changed is that the front engine rear-wheel drive cars seem to have just got a little bit quicker versus the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars, but that is just hearsay. We don't quite have empirical evidence to prove that. And as Chris Jennings makes his way through turn number 3, right now he's keeping himself there just about, but I think all these drivers want to get closer to Gary Toole, who's just around the corner at turn number 4. And right now, Toole doing a very good job here of making sure not to fall back into the clutches of his AM peers for this final spot on the AM podium. Johnson and Bailiff, they've definitely pulled away, but Toole right now keeping himself in a position whereby I think he fancies his chances to make sure this is a podium today. But back to the fight for second, as our leader, Alex Gall, now has a 1 second lead. That lead has come forth very, very gradually, although intriguingly on this lap, Gall's been the fastest in what has been the second sector. Matias Penttilä on the previous lap was the fastest in the first sector, and Stuart Reynolds on the previous lap was the fastest in the final sector. Alex Gall has just set the fastest lap of the race, a 30.362, but Penttilä and Reynolds, if they were not fighting, I would imagine they would be matching Gall literally on terms of pace, and therefore it does go to show that right now Alex Gall once again just able to stay slightly ahead here as Nils Corr falls back a little bit coming out of turn number 2. Has the BMW driver lost his momentum? Is he going to experience another Nürburgring here? Well, now that he's lost the toe, he's not going to be able to get back in there. Well, say it's not so, but he is heading towards the pit stops here, so he might have to think about, does he change up his strategy in order to be able to bring himself back into contention of this fight? Well, that's something only he can decide. We will find out accordingly. But right now, as we head towards the 20-minute mark, nobody has yet defected to the pits for their maiden pit stop. We do have Duncan Wright into the pits once again. I do believe that might be for repair work on the car. We'll keep you apprised of that. As Nils Corr picks up a slowdown there for track limits to the chicane. And that slowdown is going to relegate him out of attacking distance now of the top 3. That will put him to the best part of 2 seconds behind, if not more. So Corr has cost himself some time. As we're looking back, we do see John Bailiff still keeping ahead of Edwards and Idris Abdullahi, who follow him along. But the 2 Ford Mustangs right now, they've got to be fuel saving here. They've got to be thinking about the bigger picture because they've been this close for some time. Albeit Edwards there completely offline coming through the chicane, and indeed turning it into a bit of a skid pan through that chicane with the fact the car was more sideways than pointed a straight line. But even the Ford Mustang can slide if you get it right. And the 55 right now, definitely under pressure from the Mustang of Idris Abdullahi in the 269. Down the start finish straight they go, and we ride on board here with the satellite racing driver from France as he heads into the opening corner. Going down the gearbox, you can hear there on the downshift the engine revs just roaring upwards and through turn number 2. Well, right now the satellite racing driver just taking it nice and easy behind, having to really use the lower gears here to make sure he gets the apexes absolutely lined up. But hold the phone, ladies and gentlemen, we've got some drama, and Mark Johnson, he's had a spin. That's at turn 1 into 2, and the Track Mouse racing driver once again sees everything he's crafted early on in the race all fall to pieces. And that's drama for Johnson, who falls to the very back now of the hunt for what is now effectively second place in the M-Class. It was third previously of Gary Toole, but Toole takes that second place on, and it's Jennings, Van Beelen and Rob Sharp, and then Johnson behind Mayer, only 8 tenths behind. So it's a twist of fate here, and we take a look back in time to see exactly how it happened. So this was Johnson making his way in towards turn number 1, full speed into the corner as per usual. Where did it go wrong? It was at the turn 2 apex, just carried a bit too much speed. I think there might have just accidentally downshifted a little bit too aggressively. Can we get on board of that? Yes, we can. Let's listen in and keep an eye on the dashboard. And in the end, intriguingly, no, held third gear there, but you could hear the car starting to lift on the rear axle. I wonder if Johnson perhaps just took a little bit too much curb at the start of turn number 2, and with the downshift from 4th to 3rd, that just upset the rear left tyre, and it reduced the amount of grip there. As he went to turn in, the lateral grip of the car just came loose, and that's what led to the rear of the car going around. But a very much on the limit instant there for Mark Johnson. That shows you how hard he was pushing. But now all that push has gone to a shove, and it shoved him all the way down towards the back of the AM top 10. Back to live racing we come then, and as we do, well, more fighting, no doubt about it, as Guy Edwards has found his way past John Bailiff off camera. So whilst we're looking at the replay, we have seen one of the 2 Ford Mustangs that were chasing down the winner or Binnett racing at BMW M4 AM driver. They have picked their way past, but not before a 9.5 second gap has been created to Nils Corr, who's just picked up another slowdown for track limits at the chicane. So therefore, Nils Corr right now, in his haste to try and catch up to the top 3, is now starting to make some small errors. Those errors are adding up in terms of race time. So our top 3 have definitely broken away. Then Corr's by himself at the moment in 4th place, and Guy Edwards, I think, will take a bit of inspiration in 9. That gap to Corr has now just come down a whole 1.5 seconds to 8 seconds by the time he clears turns 12. But as he does so, meanwhile, back to the very front. There's Gull, there's Penttilä right behind, and then Stuart Reynolds is into the pit. So Reynolds decides to go for the undercut here. Interesting. Now, the thing with this for Reynolds is he's gambling, and he's gambling massively. You'll note that we haven't had anybody else come into the pits yet, other than the 2 drivers who retired from the race, of Cranstone, who was towed on lap number 1, and Mariah, who's come into the pits after a further altercation. But Reynolds right now, by coming in, is anybody else coming into the pits? If not, Reynolds right now is gambling that he's going to come out in clear airs. We do have a car in the pits. That's Rob Sharp who's come in. And so, as I believe, Heinz Mayer. Yes, Mayer's into the pits as well. So, a few pit stops starting to appear. This is for the undercut strategy, the best part of 23 minutes into the race. And Reynolds now leaves the pit lane. But where does this put him? Does it put him in clear air? It looks as though it does. The only caveat to that is the fact that he will have Kim Such in front of him, as Such makes his way to turns 1 and 2. So, Reynolds will have to find his way potentially past the Oris Racing Digital Red driver, albeit that gap will be 3 seconds initially. That may be enough to give Reynolds confidence that he's not going to catch him by the time Such has to come into the pit lane. We will see, but if so, then Reynolds might have found a little bit of magic here, and understandably Rob Sharp is going to come out into clear track, as is Heinz Mayer. So they've all decided to go for it. It is a moderate pit time loss here at Motorsport Arena Oschersleben. It's not the longest pit stop, but it is also not one of the shortest. And the point being here, if you get it right, you may just be able to gauge the ground. As Gull's into the pit, so is Penttilä. So it looks like the fuel tanks there could only go 15 or 16 laps. They couldn't get a 17th lap out of them, although everyone has extended beyond our typical 20-minute mark, and therefore this may turn it into, it'll still be a 2-stop race, but it may mean the final stint of this race is going to be a very short one, as Nils Corr stays out for another lap. So that would perhaps indicate that either Gull and Penttilä were not able to fuel save, or they're reacting alluding to the fact that Reynolds has come in and he's got himself clear air. They'll be told by their spotters that Reynolds is in clear air. He'll be putting in a qualifying lap on his out lap. So therefore, the only way that they can respond is by coming in immediately and doing the same. But we'll see whether it gives Reynolds an opportunity to get right into the thick of it, as we have had Corr and Idris Abdullahi stay out, so has Taylor Adams, so has Simon Povey. In the AM class, Gary Toole has stayed out, as has Oliver Carwadine, and Alex Gull leaving the pits now. We was 1 second ahead of Penttilä before the pit stop started, and I think he's still going to be ahead come the end of these pit stops, as Reynolds comes down to turn number 1. Gull's already clear. Pentillä's making his way to pit lane exit. It's a very sharp right-hander, and in the end, Stuart Reynolds does get ahead. The RD Simsport driver has a very, very slow pit stop by comparison, and also completely runs deep there into the pit lane exit line. So Gull still leads now on strategy, we believe, but Stuart Reynolds has moved into second, and Matias Penttilä, who's fallen back to third. But Reynolds had the fastest pit stop of all three of them by the best part of 0.6 of a second versus Gull, and Matias Penttilä took a lot more fuel in that pit stop, and therefore he's dropped behind for RD Simsport. But does that mean he'll have a quicker stop the second time around? We'll have to wait and see. But Rob Sharp, meanwhile, he makes his way onwards. Remember, he was one of the very first to pit in the AM class, and he comes out just ahead of Dennis Van Beelen, who's side by side with him, and Van Beelen's lost out as Heinzmann has not been able to capitalise. So therefore, the shuffle in the AM class is such whereby John Bailiff still leads, no doubt about that, on strategy, and we'll hopefully see Toole and Carwadine come into the pits at the end of this lap. If not, I have to wonder what their fuel tanks are doing. Jennings, meanwhile, has now moved into that second place. In fact, he's got ahead here, we think. In fact, no, it's Gary Toole he's still in a back and forth with, so it could be Toole or Jennings, but Rob Sharp has definitely cleared Van Beelen, who is right behind him, and Heinzmann has dropped 2.5 seconds back. So it's not worked out for Matt, it's worked out for Sharp, and Sharp right now using strategy to beat the cars he can't beat on circuit. But the problem is he's now got to close down Jennings, and with Van Beelen right behind, I think Van Beelen will fancy his chances in that Mustang versus the rather small little Porsche. But through into the chicane they come, and as they do, we'll back to our leader. Taylor Adams is going another lap without pitting, so the Regenta Sim Racing driver here is going to go the best part of 18 laps at least, with Simon Povey right behind him and Matt Slate there as well. Will be Alex Gull right now. He's got a 1.2 second advantage over Stuart Reynolds, and off camera we can tell you that Gary Toole is leaving the pit lane. Well, there he is, in fact. Where is Jennings? Carwadine's already made his way into the pits. He's currently stopped, and in fact he's just leaving his pits as soon as I say that. But there's Jennings, there's Toole. How close is it going to be? It's going to be very close here, and I think Gary Toole is just going to squeeze ahead literally by about 0.2. There's the delta. Gary Toole does hold on versus Chris Jennings. Despite a slow pit exit, it was enough. And right now, Chris Jennings knows that he has got Toole up against the ropes, at least for this one lap, where Toole's got to get the tyre temperature back into the car. And Rob Sharp and Dennis Van Beelen are exchanging blows here as well. So Toole and Jennings are second and third in the AM class behind John Bailiff, albeit Bailiff has checked out further up the road. And then Sharp and Van Beelen are fighting over fourth place, with Heinz Marion sixth ahead of Oliver Carwadine, who by taking that late pit stop has in fact guaranteed himself a spot ahead of John Roberts, at least out. You'll see Roberts and Lee Berridge in the rear of the picture. There they are, and they have Kim Such close behind. And Such, in fact, has gained in the pits on these two as they roar the way through triple left. From them, Mark Johnson as well. Johnson on the recovery drive after his spin that relegated him all the way down the order. And I believe in the pit lane, the team have actually made some adjustments to the car. They've taken a look at it, and also they have put a fresh set of tyres on the Trackmouse Racing McLaren. They've decided they may as well sacrifice the time to see if they can get him even further up the order. As Andy Marsden there falls a lap down and steps aside, Ryan Penny will soon come behind Marsden. Expect the same. But as they make the way through turn number 10 right now, Marsden, to be fair, out there having good fun. And whilst he may not be the fastest out there, every lap is a little bit of experience turned. But as they make the way onwards, we look from the very back of the field to the front of the field. Taylor Adams still out there, now on a 19th lap, refusing to pit. Simon Povey and Matt Slate together here, unless our graphics were mistaken. But I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, unless I'm losing my memory, and hopefully not at my age, which I won't disclose, but I can tell you one thing, that these guys have not put their way down the pit lane in front of me. I've looked out the window, so therefore they've surely got to be coming in sometime soon. And Regenta Sim Racing have definitely gone a long distance, as is Povey's team for F-Tech Racing. But they're showing the fuel tank can go very deep into this race. They may... Hold up a second. Are they trying to go for a one-stop strategy here? Because look at the race timer right now. We have 31 minutes left in this race. They are going the distance here. If they can get it to 30 minutes, if they can complete this lap and not be coughing up fumes, then you would imagine they may have pulled this off. Slate has come in, however, so perhaps Slate here recognised the fact he hasn't been able to get it quite done or doesn't want to risk it. Perhaps he's taking the safety measure here, but he wants to do more fuel so he wants to commit to it. But I wonder whether there's a one-stop strategy that's viable here. Alternatively, whether all the drivers, because of the one pit stop that was done by Stuart Reynolds, it has triggered everybody else off to follow the strategy of the one Fury Simsport driver. There's a lot of question marks to be answered now, but as we look to Van Beelen chasing after Rob Sharp, the problem is when these guys are fighting each other so closely, they won't be able to afford to fuel save anywhere near as much. But that is a very interesting conundrum because we have seen every round be a confirmed two-stop here. But could this be the day where a one-stop suddenly prevails? But if so, well, there's a lot of time to be considered. But there's not enough time to think about that right now, as here comes the fight for second place in AM, or 10th overall. It's Tool versus Jennings. And, well, Tool holding on just a little bit longer as we look back for the rear of the GST Racing 207. But goodness me, Jennings there, if he was any closer, I think he would have definitely gone for it. As we have briefly lost Alex Gold from this race, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we'll wait and confirm. Is it a connectivity issue or is it a sign of something? But if so, it would be a premature retirement for the Apex and Chicane Mrs. driver, and we will miss him from this race. It's looking as though it may be a retirement for Gold. We don't quite have a story as to what's happened, but we'll let you know when we can. But Tool right now and Jennings together as they come through triple left. Well, Jennings can't get any closer really because of the dirty air, but it's all happening right now as I think Alex Gold may have been forced to retire due to a technical issue, and that is an absolute shock, no doubt about it, because Gold was controlling this race, and it does seem as though being the leader either over or in pro, that is not a ticket to be leading the race all the way to the end. If it can happen to Bailiff at Donington Park, it's happened to Gold here at Oschersleben. But with that, we come back to Reynolds and Penttilä. They make their way onto another lap. But the question is, with Nils Corr in third, Taylor Adams, he's just come in after what has been a 31-minute opening stint. Can they go the way? But the car's up on the jacks there. They're putting fresh tyres on the car. Now, is that confidence for Agenta Sim Racing? Do they think they can do this and take the fresh tyres to give them the pace? Simon Povey, meanwhile, makes well along. In fact, it might just be for one or two tyres, to be fair. It may not have been a full set of tyres. Povey's car was not up on the jacks, so therefore, Taylor Adams right now may have changed one or two tyres there, and that might be to try and take them to the end. Povey has opted just to put the fuel in the car and carry on as he's picked up a bit of slowdown there on pit exit, but he'll serve that quite quickly. And most importantly, as we see all the drivers are coming on out, they come out ahead of Gary Toole and Chris Jennings. So they've dodged a big banana skin here, which is to fall into the fight for second through to fifth of the AM class. Now we'll have to wait to see over the remaining distance whether it's the two-stop or the proverbial one-stop, which is going to be the optimum strategy. Behind, a lot further behind, here's Mark Johnson trying to look for his way past Kim Sarch. He's definitely pushing for this right now as we jump aboard the front bump here on the Trackhouse Racing McLaren. And here he goes, looking around the outside. There's going to be a lot of camber available to him into turn number 3 at Hasseröder. But can he get it stopped in time? The answer is yes, he can. He can use the mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain to carry the momentum. But over the crest of the apex curve he goes. And as he does in towards turn number 4. Right now, Mark Johnson does get ahead. Kim Such fought hard for that. But Johnson, in the end, had the confidence and the tyre grip on the right-hand side. And that was how he was able to go all the way around. So a lovely move there for Mark Johnson. But he's got a long way to go here. He's up into 9th for Dan. But remember, he started second in class. And he'll want to be back there if he can by the end of the race. But between him and second place of Gary Toole is the best part of none other than 24 seconds. It's not impossible, but he's got to go some here, and he's got to expect his rivals to fight each other if he wants to make this happen. Now, I do have an update in my ear, ladies and gentlemen. We do have confirmation of a retirement from this race, at least for now, for Alex Gold. There's been a technical issue with the car, and they have had to park it up offside the circuit and tow it into the pit. So Gold will not be adding another win to his repertoire here today, at least for now. But I have to wait to see what is to come. But Gold's car is out of the race. The Apex and Chicane Missers have just seen a huge open opportunity. Well, it's all fallen apart, and that will confirm a 0-point score to his drop score for this season. As for Alex Gold, he can't afford any more slip-ups over the remainder or technical issues if he wants to guarantee a strong set of results. But that's a surprise, and not a welcome one, but it will be an open opportunity now for Reynolds and Penttilä to go fighting, and Nils Corr to try and get involved in that. But Stuart Reynolds is the man who right now is leading in the 314, and with a 3.5 second gap at this time. Well, it seems though that lead is just creeping one way, and it is creeping in his favour. With Penttilä on that lap, it was a 30.713 for the leader. Penttilä, meanwhile, it was a 30.807, so a 10th once again in the favour of the Fury Simsport 314, and the number 12 from RD Simsport here that we look at. It's pushy hard, but it's not enough to bring the gap down. And as he roars his way onto lap number 23, right now these two definitely have been a class of their own compared to Nils Corr, who's in the rear of the picture. There he is, as he makes his way out of turns 1 and 2 and in towards 3. But we've got a bit of fighting behind as Guy Edwards, well, he's cleared Idris Abdullahi, but it does seem as though Idris Abdullahi just cleared John Bailiff through turns 1 and 2, but it won't be for long here, because he has picked up a slowdown coming through the opening corner, and therefore he's going to have to serve that soon, as Bailiff wants to get back past him. He doesn't want to lose any time, but I think here Idris Abdullahi being a bit cheeky, trying to serve the slowdown on the racing line, albeit fairly. What he's trying to do to achieve that is essentially lift and coast a bit more than he normally would into the corners. He does exactly that. So in the slowdown, it is burned, albeit Bailiff does burn a little bit of time behind, but in the return, he gets to do a bit of fuel saving as well in a way. That's the way they have to look at it. But Idris Abdullahi knowing how to game the system there. Nothing wrong with that. If you can gain a fair advantage, you go for it. All drivers would do so. And John Bailiff just tucking it in behind. Now, how do they change places in the first place? Well, here's a replay to explain. So this was going down the start for this straight. I think it's going to be one of the classic passes in towards turn number 1. They roared the way in towards the opening corner, and Idris Abdullahi up the inside here. Bailiff didn't really fight it, to be fair to him, and in the end, well, the Satellite Racing driver took way too much apex curb. That's why he picked up the slowdown penalty, but he took track position and then was able to burn the penalty without having to yield the place back. So back to your racing we come then, or your live pictures we should say, and the two drivers we were just talking about make the way onto another tour of the circuit. Plenty more to come with 24 minutes left on the clock, and we look to Lee Berridge. Now, Mark Johnson has just found his way past Lee Berridge, we believe, and in fact, no, it might be the opposite here. It does seem as though, in fact, yes, he has. I'll correct myself a second time there. So Johnson continue to be on the charge, now up to 8th in the AM class. How did he get that move done? Here's a quick replay to explain. So this was Johnson coming out of turns 1 and 2. Berridge had got the power down, but wasn't too confident in doing so. And much like he did to Kim Such, did Johnson go around the outside? No, he switched it back at the last moment there. A nice little dummy there from Mark Johnson. It got Berridge to think the move was coming around the outside. And Berridge, you'll notice, pointed the car slightly to the outside there rather than towards the corner. And that actually cost him his line and saw the car slide a little bit under braking. So Johnson there did a very good job of just knowing how to get into the head of his rival and being able to make that blaze. To be fair, Lee Berridge, well done to get it stopped. Not many would have, but the boosted motorsport driver there definitely being outfoxed by the track mouse race of McLaren. But as they head onwards then on our live pictures once again, what's happening in the fight for second in AM? And well, it's still Toole, Jennings and Sharp with Van Beelen in the picture. The only problem is that they are queuing up behind Taylor Adams and Simon Povey. And remember, Adams and Povey are both, we believe, on the one-stop strategy, whereas everybody else is on a two-stop here. So what this really means right now, less so for Taylor Adams at this point, more so for Simon Povey, they are probably having to drive to a bit more of a controlled and slower pace compared to the cars behind, particularly when Toole, Jennings and Sharp are all getting the toe off the cars in front. And this is going to be awkward here for Gary Toole, because if he hasn't worked out what's going on in front of him right now, he's very quickly going to realise that the two pros in front of him, who in theory are faster drivers based on their classification, he's going to be thinking they must be doing something different on the strategy. And when the penny drops that he notices they are at a one-stop, if he's not aware of it already, then he's got a difficult conundrum to try and understand and solve, which is, does he go for a move here for GST Racing, or does he wait? But if he does, then what he's got to do is drive defensively versus Jennings. Alternatively, everybody in this queue now will try to fuel save, not to switch to the one-stop strategy, as we do see that Adams getting very deep at turn number 3, gets it back together at Hasserode just in the nick of time before Povey was able to take the place. But you can understand now if it's becoming a fuel-saving race between the 4 cars behind, the 4 AM drivers here for second place, and whoever can save the most fuel here may leap into that second place come at the second and final round of pit stops that we believe await them. But if Adams and Povey can make the one-stop work here, well, in terms of the respective time, they are 41 seconds off the leaders. The pit total time on the first pit stop was the best part of 44 to 46 seconds, so it would put them within the distance of the pit time, but we believe the actual time lost in the pit lane is somewhere in the region of around 38 to 40 seconds, so it would not enable them to get into the lead of the race, but it would put them quite close to the bottom end of the top 5. So that's going to be intriguing there, but it will all come down to just how much time is being lost. Also, whether the leaders pull even more time out on Adams and Povey between now and when they do make those pit stops. So we'll have to see, because we haven't got long to go before the theorised second pit stop is due to come. If the first pit stops started to come 21 to 23 minutes into the race, when you do the quick mathematics there, we'd expect the second and final round of pit stops to be somewhere in the region of around the 42nd to 46th minute is where they begin. So in approximately 2 to 6 minutes time. Will that be the way it happens? We'll have to find out. But we're not far away from finding out the answer to that, as meanwhile Alex Gold does make his way back out to the circuit, ladies and gents, which is great to see. The only thing for the apex and chicane misses dry is he now falls to 2 laps down. The technical issue with the car has been rectified, but McLaren carries on here. But the problem is he's now down in 22nd place overall, so he won't be scoring any major points here today. But I think his goal at this point is just get the car home and finish the race like every other race here and pick up what points you can. But from him, Lee Berridge, oh, that's in the grass there at turns 1 and 2. He's found his way to the weeds, and the boosted motorsport driver gets himself pointed back in the right direction eventually. But what exactly happened to put himself in the wrong direction in the first place? And the answer is sold by replay. So this was Lee Berridge making his way down into turn number 1 only moments ago. It takes all the apex curb in the world. The Mustang handles it. Goes very deep into turn 2. In fact, with so much speed there, I can imagine that might have been a bit of a panic downshift at the end. And the rear tyres made their way onto the grass after the front. And that's what sent the car on around then. And on what was quite slick grass, he tried to get it back up to speed immediately, but then had to realise he had to release the throttles, otherwise he would be doing a 360-degree arc. But Lee Berridge now on your live pictures, he's got it back together and in good time as well. As meanwhile, Rob Sharp is into the pit. So we are into our final set of pit stops here. A bit earlier than perhaps expected for the Abreuris racing driver. Understandably, I think he doesn't want to be part of that long conga line of cars of tall Jennings Van Beelen himself. So he's pulled himself out of the equation. It might have been a good idea for Sharp to do so, to be fair, because he gives himself options here where others do not. Now, do Toole, Jennings and Van Beelen respond? That's the problem they have. And well, if you're Gary Toole here, you do have a lot more options available to you compared to the drivers behind you, who do have to react a little bit more if you want to play the game of triggered off strategy. In return, Toole right now might be very happy to run in behind Simon Povey and also Taylor Adams, and feels though being in the double draft of the 2 cars in front is giving him the time to save fuel, save some tyres, and also maintain his race pace. There's so much going through this at the moment. It really is a strategic race here today at Oschersleben. Perhaps the most strategic race of them all this season, excluding the Circuit des 24 Hours de Mans, which we expect there to be a lot of a strategy. But at Oschersleben, we've seen plenty of battling. We haven't seen too many overtakes, although the ones we have seen have been absolutely brilliant. But we have seen a lot of thought processes go through, and really the strategy today is where the battle sits, because you want to try and get ahead rather than fall behind, as overtaking here has proven to be so challenging. But Gary Toole then in towards turn number 14. Through Zeppelin curve he comes, stays out, as does Jennings, as does Van Beelen, and Heinz Mayer has fallen a long way back. Now I think Mayer's made a mistake somewhere. We don't quite have a replay to explain it, but we have seen he's fallen the best part of 15 seconds behind Van Beelen. The last lap was 2 seconds slower, so something's got a bit wrong there for Mayer. We're not quite sure what's gone wrong, but we know he has slipped away to a degree, and that gap has opened up considerably as Matt Slate gets a bit closer. Rear picture, Oliver Carwadine and Mark Johnson are together. Carwadine is in the foreground of the 2 cars coming towards us in the Oris Racing yellow car, and then you do see Mark Johnson there right now looking to try and pick up another place. He's slithering all over the back of the number 14, and well, the number 44 driver here rolls a little bit deep by design, and that's the idea, to get the switch back. But he rolls a little bit too early to the apex. In fact, completely has to readjust his line. Well, that's all part and parcel when you're running so close to the car in front. The fact you can't see your corner as well, so you have to start to do things based on rhythm and memory. But, of course, one of the nice things about the McLaren is it does have the best forward visibility of all the GT4 cars. That's a running trend in GT3s and GT4s. McLaren really do a good job of giving forward visibility to the driver by essentially having the front portion of the car curve away and down from the driver. Keep in mind, of course, the engine is behind the driver. It's mid-engine rear-wheel drive, so therefore there's no engine to worry about as such, and McLaren have then designed the rest of the shell to accommodate that over the front, so the driver has the better ability to see the apex of the corner in a battle situation, which is what we're seeing here. This onboard really gives you an idea of how that bonnet is gradually curving downwards. Tucked in behind Carwadine, he's getting close, thinks about it again. Carwadine puts the car in the middle of the road there as they head for 11 into 12, and understandably right now as they come off of the Amman curve, Caldini having to go defensive more and more. Johnson looking to the outside. This is more for a switchback, but in the end, doesn't quite commit to the manoeuvre. Does he duck to the pits? No, he does not. Cuts up the inside. Caldini breaks early there. And I think, respect to the fact that Johnson was always going to go for it, so he's broken early to give himself the option of the switchback as Caldini. But as they paddle away down the start finish straight, the McLaren driver gets ahead for now. But we're roaring the way onwards here. We look back for the rear, and Caldini's not done yet, or is he? He is done. He decides he doesn't want to go for it this time, and Johnson rolls his way into turn 1. And in the end, Mark Johnson now up into 6th place at the AM class. Brilliant work. Keep in mind, of course, this is effectively 7th, with Rob Sharp having pitted only months ago. But right now, Johnson definitely on a recovery drive. He's not going to be winning a race today, but he will be winning the hearts of many with regards to the fact he never gives in. But speaking of never giving in right now, Stuart Reynolds may be leading this race. We look to your leader, but Matias Penttilä, he is not giving him to the pressure, trying to chase down the man who's really been his rival all season long for 2nd place in the championship. And both of these two, of course, very eligible to be in that championship, especially now with Alex Gold's difficulties today. It is going to open up the championship massively going into our final 2 rounds. So that's going to be on the minds of these drivers, that suddenly this championship has been blown open as a result of circumstances outside of the control of everybody involved. But in towards the triple left they go. They've still got to get it to the finish line here and get the points home. And even those circumstances could blight them. Not that we're wishing them, to be fair. We don't want to put the commentator's curse on anyone, but anything can happen in motorsport, and it normally does. Speaking of things happening, here's Dennis Van Beelen, so he confirms he's on the 2-stop strategy as he makes his way down pit lane. And the limiter on there, and his market is to try and beat Rob Sharp. Here is Sharp heading into turn number 11. He's got clear track in front of him. He's had clear track for the majority of the start of his 3rd stint. So Sharp right now, he's been pumping in the laps. He's actually been faster than most. The only drivers he's not been matching are Toole and Jennings, but he has been matching Van Beelen lap after lap. So therefore you would imagine he's perhaps going to get ahead, but Dennis Van Beelen heads down the pit lane. He has been serviced. He comes off the limiter. Here he goes then. Where is Sharp? And Sharp's still a long way back here. I think Van Beelen is going to beat him on the pit exit. In fact, he will, as Stuart Reynolds comes into the pit lane, and Matias Penttilä takes the lead in this race. And Van Beelen, does he get clear of Such and Petty? He's going to have to go around the outside here. This is important. If he doesn't, he's going to be pulled into a battle, and suddenly Rob Sharp's going to be with. In fact, Rob Sharp's had an error. Sharp's got it wrong somewhere. We're not quite sure where Sharp is, as Petty tucks up the inside of Such, so he takes the place of his teammate, does Petty. So it's all happening here as the pit stops are unfolding. And well, ladies and gents, when they never say a race is boring in SRM, and here's why. Because even when you've got a race based on strategy, there's all action in and around the pit stops and the build up to them and the segue away. But right now, well, Rob Sharp has fallen a long way back. There he is. In fact, he's now a lap down essentially. Well, no, he's not a lap down. Let me correct myself there. He has still got a lap to Alex Gold, but Alex Gold right in front of him there, and then Lee Berridge. So he's lost plenty of places. And with Stuart Reynolds having just exited the pit lane, here he is. He comes out in 6th place with Chris Jennings having just come into the pits. That's in response, most likely to Van Beelen, and to try and put some pressure onto Gary Toole. But Reynolds in a very comfortable 6th overall right now. And well, it does look as though here for Reynolds, all he's doing is everything right. And the pressure is on Matias Penttilä to have to respond. But here he comes, making his way through 11 and 12. And as the RD Simsport driver, and with 12.5 minutes left on the clock, understandably, you would think he's going to be coming into the pits, if not at the end of this lap, within the next couple. But there he comes out 13. He stays on course. He does not defect into the pit lane, so therefore he's going to go a 32nd lap before he then makes his way on in potentially. But with the pit stops playing out, Heinzman and Ryan Penny are both in now. Penny making his way down pit lane. Meanwhile, Mayer, he is getting ready to stop. And we'll see what happens between them. But what exactly happened only moments ago to Rob Sharp? Here's a replay to explain. Now, this would have been Sharp pushing into turns 1 and 2 to try and catch up to Van Beelen, but into the opening corner he went. Looked okay there. Into turn 2. Tried to turn in, but carried way too much speed, and the car understeered wide. And that's how he lost the place there to Lee Berridge. But it looks like, in fact, he may have made an error early on because he was much further back. And, well, goodness me, a very long way back. That's John Roberts in front of him. So in the end, it's not worked out at all for Rob Sharp, and it's been a pit stop not to be remembered. As for Van Beelen, meanwhile, he's jumped him, put some considerable time between the two of them. Mark Johnson, meanwhile, still out there. He's behind Matt Slate now, but remember, he's still got to pit as Johnson. as we understand it. Matt Slate the same. But we are wondering about our two-stoppers. Well, Taylor Adams, he's behind Stuart Reynolds. So Reynolds has come out 10 seconds ahead. So the overall pit time lost in the end was 30 seconds when we do the mathematics on that. So Adams has not gained. But right now, you would imagine that Adams might have an opportunity here to move into third on the one-stop strategy. It's going to be very close for Nils Corr, and Simon Povey will be coming along with him if they're committing to that strategy. Gary Tool's still there as well. Is anybody else suddenly switching from a two-stop to a one-stop strategy here, as we have Rob Sharp getting ahead of multiple drivers because there's several drivers into the pit lane. There he goes, as Kim Such, John Roberts and Lee Berridge will make their way down pit row, and Such right now taking his time, causing a bit of a queue behind, but to be fair, drivers are encouraged to rush their way into the pit. However, they still got to hit the pit limiter line, and not all of them have the confidence to snap onto the limiter literally only microseconds before they do have that line. But as Matt Slate carries his one through, Mark Johnson is right there with him. These two still push each other around and give each other company. Nils Corr, meanwhile, he stays out for another lap. And the number 15 driver here extending his second stint. Matias Penttilä in, and he's leaving the pits already. He's got a very busy pit lane in front and behind him, so that's going to give a cause for concern. As Guy Edwards has come in, here comes Stuart Reynolds. So Reynolds, I think, is going to lose out here. And in fact, a 4-second delta in the stationary time. There's a lot of traffic here. That's not good for Penttilä. He gets caught up behind. That is a mistake there from the car in front of him. Kim Such gets it wrong, and what's looking to be a brilliant overcut strategy. Matias Penttilä in the end finds himself scuppered by the Oris Racing digital red machine that gets through on the pit exit, and Penttilä is being held back here as Stuart Reynolds now holds on to the strategic lead as we understand it. Of course, both drivers have got a ton of traffic to work their way through. This could still hurt them. This could massively pinch them. And stepping aside there is the 486 of John Roberts, who goes completely sideways, and then Matias Penttilä does get him past Kim Such, but Such is going to be absolutely fuming with the fact that it hasn't quite worked out for him on pit lane exit. And then you're going to have Matias Penttilä, who's going to be absolutely like a volcano erupting, at least in the brief moment there, thinking as though for all the hard work, it's all come apart just simply because he's found a driver at the end of the pit lane who, in it being a lap down, makes an error. But it happens, and that's the way the racing has gone. And the RD Simsport driver now, knowing he's got to try and convert what is a 2-second deficit into some form of attack, whereas previously he'd been able to overturn the 3-second deficit to a 1-second advantage through the pit stops. It's all gone very wrong, but can he find a way to make it go right? As Taylor Adams, meanwhile, has not leapt ahead of the two, understandably. He's behind by 10 seconds, but Nils Corr's still out there. Benny just Abdullah, he's in. John Bailiff's in for the lead of the AM class here. We haven't really taken a look at them recently. We will do so in due course, but Adams right now is really the one you've got to keep an eye on here, because if he can pull this off, he will be leaping his way to fourth as a minimum, if not third place here on strategy, and Simon Povey is following him on through, and Gary Tool here is staying with them. Now Tool, oh, this is going to be, I don't want to use his surname in a sentence, but I'm going to have to. It's going to be a tall order here for Gary Tool if he does pull this off, the 207 driver, because he did pit quite early for that first pit stop. He pitted the latest of the group, fighting over second place, but if he can make this count for another 8 minutes of the final lap, he has leapt ahead of John Bailiff, and Bailiff right now would be 20 seconds behind. In fact, let me double check my statistics. No, 16 seconds behind. And Bailiff, well, he'll be lapping faster, there's no doubt about it. But has he got enough time here? Has Tool got enough fuel in the car to potentially take his first win of the season in the AM class? And he would do it by just simply switching from a 2-stop to a 1-stop here, having seen that Povey and Adams have been able to do it. We haven't got long left to find out as Nils Corr comes into the pit lane. So this is one of the big moments here. We know Reynolds and Penttilä, or we assume that they will come out ahead of it, unless Corr has actually pulled off a huge amount of fuel saving that we haven't been aware of all race long. Don't rule it out, to be fair. If we are seeing Adams and Povey go as long as they are, it is possible because of the fact that essentially they're extending a stint, or they're extending 2 stints by 10 minutes apiece. They are saving 20 minutes worth of fuel here today. And right now, Corr parked up. But there goes Reynolds then past him. There's Penttilä, and Corr now making his way out the pit lane. So he has not got enough there to fuel save and get close enough to them to be able to be a factor in the battle for first and second. Here comes Taylor Adams. So in the end, the one-stop strategy does not seemingly leap ahead, or does it? It doesn't quite. So in the end, Corr does stay out ahead. So Taylor Adams here has been able to move from 7th to 4th on the one stop, and Simon Povey has come from 11th to 5th. They have both made some huge progress, as Gary Toole, unfortunately, cannot repeat the same, and he does have to come in. It's a short stop here for the team, but the GST Racing team have had to go to the second pit stop. But where's it going to put him versus Van Beelen, Jennings and Sharp? That's the big question now. Here comes Van Beelen. He's got Jennings right behind. Rob Sharp's a lot further back. You can see him in the rear of the picture. Carl needs to come into the pit lane, so he relinquishes his positions. But Gary Toole, I think, is going to clear them just about as he takes the very sharp pit lane exit. And there's Van Beelen side by side. And Van Beelen moves into second place. Jennings is right there. And Toole in the end has to slot in between. Oh, goodness me, was there contact? I'm not sure. I think there was. There was contact for Jennings to the back of Toole's car. And in the end, Jennings lifts off the throttle there. Respected, he almost sent Toole into the barrier. Well, great racing respect shown, but Van Beelen in the end, he just manages to steal away second place on the pit stop strategy, and the Ford Mustang driver is not going to quite believe it. It's not going to be the win today in the AM class, but it's definitely going to feel like a bit of a win of his own, because they sprung surprise on everybody, and Gary Toole in the end, in that tiny little touch with Jennings, that was the delta that's led to the two falling backwards, and Van Beelen right now may be clear of it all. But my goodness, what a moment, ladies and gentlemen. We need to take a look back at that moment from on board with Chris Jennings, and here we go then in terms of the replay. And this was Toole leaving his pit box, but meanwhile we ride on board with Jennings. He made his way out of the final corner. So at this point, both drivers are going to know that Toole is heading down the pit lane to the limiter line, and very shortly he's going to be coming up to speed, but they won't know where he is because you can't really see over the pit lane wall. Through turn number 1 they go, and then suddenly there is Toole. Van Beelen will have just seen him and know he's got to go for it. And Jennings watches this, but listen in. And a tiny tap there as Toole on the outside line just could not get the power down. Jennings got the power down, thinking Toole would return to full throttle, and that's why Jennings lifted off there, because otherwise if he'd carried on there would have been contact and it would have pushed Toole to the back. It may have seen both cars go to the wall. It's the last thing we want to see, and very fair racing between the two of them, and it means now Van Beelen may, as we return to your live racing for 4.5 minutes left to go plus the final lap, Van Beelen may have just consolidated this second place in AM and 10th overall, but Toole versus Jennings for the best of the rest rights in 11th place overall and third in the class. This may just go down to the wire. Toole does have a Porsche that is very fresh by comparison. In fact, this is going to be a very short stint for the 207 for its final stint of the day. Meanwhile, Jennings has got one of the longer final stints, but he's definitely got his composure. He's got the pace in that Mercedes, and we have seen pound for pound the Mercedes here today at Motorsport Arena Oschersleben has been the slightly faster car over the entirety of the lap, but overtaking around here is where is the fly in the ointment. It's not easy, and that's for certain, as they roar their way onto the back stretch. As they do, we do look from them to Taylor Adams, who are right now holding on to fourth place ahead of Simon Povey. They are very comfortably 12.5 seconds ahead of Guy Edwards, but they are not able to stay with Nils Corr, who is just gradually pulling away in front of them. Well, but Adams and Povey here, I wonder if they qualified a bit higher today, could they have surprised everybody with a one-stop strategy to make the way onto the podium, if not go for the win? That's always a big what-if question, but Adams and Povey have definitely pulled off something magical here if they can get to the end on this, and it'll be the first time in a long time we have seen the one-stop strategy versus the two-stop. In fact, it's the only time this season where we have seen one or more drivers go for the one-stop strategy and actually show it to be viable in matching the race time of the two-stop for the best part of the distance. Through they come then in towards the McDonald chicane, and Povey falling backwards a little bit there. I wonder whether fuel is starting to bite on these cars, albeit Povey was slightly offline through the chicane. That would have cost him about 2 tenths in totality, making his way all the way up into turns 11 and 12 here. But right now, surely those fuel tanks, they must be looking quite critical, and every little bit of fuel that can be saved at this point is going to be the difference. But from the excitement of their fuel saving and staying close together becomes the excitement of two drivers who don't need to save any fuel. We believe they're just pushing all the way to the end as Toole loses it into turn 7. The rear lets go, and the Gary Toole was a chance at third place in the AM class, if not second, has let go out of his hands as well. The Porsche driver gets himself back up to speed, but Rob Sharp now will be closing quite quickly. Sharp's not going to be able to make a move initially, but he's going to take confidence in this. As Gary Toy in the end falls down to fourth in the AM class, Chris Jennings will take that third place. He'll be hoping to go for another podium here, but Dennis Van Beelen is 2 seconds up the road. Can he make it to second place? We'll have to wait and see, as Van Beelen takes a lot of gravel with him, but it doesn't scupper his opportunities right now. But Jennings is pushing every step of the way, and there's not many more laps to go. Meanwhile, at the very front of the field, this is Stuart Reynolds right now, 1.6 seconds ahead of Matias Penttilä. These two continue to exchange lap times. At Donington Park, it was Penttilä who made the move of the round versus Stuart Reynolds for second place, was able to get ahead. Meanwhile, a couple of rounds later, at none other than Circuit Zandvoort, it was Reynolds who was able to get the upper hand of Matias Penttilä towards the very end of the race for second place. But here, it's all about the win. And for Stuart Reynolds, can he make himself a back-to-back winner? Alternatively, will Matias Penttilä make it his first win of the season? It's not long to go. They've got one more turn of the circuit, and Reynolds finds a bit of traffic as he makes his way into the final corner. And that is going to be Heinz Mayer right in front of him, but it comes at the right time. Because the white flag waves, he'll gain the toe down the start-finish straight, and if Mayer does, given the opportunity to turn one, remember, blue flags means that there's a faster driver approaching on the lead lap. You are to help facilitate the pass. You're not to just get out the way. Well, in the end, Mayer does a good job there, stepping aside on the inside of turn one. So Reynolds loses a bit of time, but not much. And now here comes Penttilä. He'll be hoping to do the same here as the leaders will push each other every step of the distance. Nils Corr, meanwhile, he still holds on to third, but Taylor Adams has just gone 6 tenths faster. He set a personal best of 31.15 on a fuel tank that must be gasping for life at this point. I don't know where he's found that pace in the Magenta Sim racing car, but he has. And Taylor Adams right now is putting out personal best right here. He may have third place here for Nils Corr, because Nils right now is not pulling away here. If anything, he's been brought back into the clutches. That's a surprise. As Simon Povey's fallen backwards there. He's now 3 seconds back. I can imagine he's having to save some more fuel. And Guy Edwards and Ben Idris Abdullahi, they're still fighting over 6th place. Your top 7's all pro drivers, and then you do have your AM leader from Win It or Bin It racer, John Bailiff, who's had a very lonely AM lead all the way through this one. But I think he'll be very happy with that, given the fact it will be a third win of the season for him and a championship lead that's definitely going to be in his hands. But from him, we must come back to the drivers at the very front of the field. Because for Stuart Reynolds right now, well, last time out at the Nürburgring, it was all about pressuring Alex Gowen to mistake and holding on. But here today, Alex Gowen had technical issues, and Reynolds was in the prime position to pick up the pieces. And he's done so brilliantly, because for Stuart Reynolds, then Fury Simsport is going to be back-to-back victories in Germany. And what a way to see out 2025 for the Mercedes driver, ahead of Matias Penttilä, who finishes second place for RD Simsport. And then it will be Nils Corr. Does he hold on? Yes, he does. And in the end, Nils Corr brings on home third place ahead of Taylor Adams, who does an absolutely brilliant job in the end, from changing tyres as well to take fourth place. And then it will be Simon Povey who finishes in fifth on the one-stop strategy, with Guy Edwards holding off Ben Idris Abdullahi for 6th place. And then we will have a 3-time winner in the AM class, because John Bailiff, for Win It or Bin It Racing, completes his race in 8th place, but the AM victory falls into his hands. It will then be Matt Slade, the best part of 10.5 seconds behind, who takes 9th place at the end in a bit of a quiet race after enjoying a lot of company with the AM drivers. In the rear of the picture, however, Wood's giving a charge to the final podium spots in AM, and in 10th place, it's Dennis Van Beelen, who is your AM runner-up, ahead of Chris Jennings by 6 tenths. And in the end, for Gary Toll, as Alex Gold finishes the race 2 laps down behind, Gary Toll in the end will take 12th place overall, but a rather reluctant 4th place in the AM class there. A spin later in the race cost him dear, as it did for Rob Sharp, who takes 5th place in AM and 13th overall. And in the end, in the recovery drive, ladies and gentlemen, we'll give this man a round of applause for Trackmouse Racing. Again, it's all gone wrong today, but he has recovered to 6th in the AM class and 14th overall. It's Mark Johnson there ahead of Oliver Carwadine, who in the end will complete your lead lap finishers, and with it your overall top 15. But as he crosses the line there, what a race from start to finish, and will plenty of great stories out there, but perhaps the biggest one of them all, back-to-back victories here for Stuart Reynolds for Fury Simsport, and knowing right now that advantage that Alex Gold carved out in the early stage of the season, it hasn't quite been wiped out, but Reynolds will feel as though the momentum is shifting into his hands. Even if Lady Luck has favoured him today, the momentum is with him now as we head into the latter half of the season break. And also there, we have to give a huge mention to Nils Corr with a brilliant drive to third place there. Late pressure with Taylor Adams, of course, and a great reminder from Stuart Adams in the YouTube chat there to remind us that Taylor Adams had changed tyres in the pits, and that's what gave him the ability to deliver such phenomenal pace towards the end on the one-stop strategy. Well, for Nils Corr, it was a moment of survival there, but he has survived to take that third place spot on the podium, and he'll be absolutely pleased with that. John Bailiff parks up there, out of fuel, I think, and hoping for the car to be towed to the pits, but three-time AM winner now, and Chris Jennings once again makes his way onto the AM podium, 11th place today. He'll be gutted he couldn't quite make a second place, but it does mean that at the very top of the AM Class Championship, Bailiff will extend his lead slightly, but the fight for second between Van Beelen, Jennings and Sharp is only getting tighter. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, as we do look to the scenic view, let's take a look at those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are. So after 60 minutes of racing at the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben's Grand Prix circuit for round 6 of Season 7 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge, brought to you on iRacing and proudly powered by Oris Digital, provisional results show that Stuart Reynolds was your overall winner for Fury Simsport by 1.3 seconds. The gap to the RD Simsport driver Matias Penttilä closed as the race went on, and we definitely saw these two drivers go back and forth as they have so many times this season. Nils Corr in the end took third place for Satellite Racing, a very strong finish to third, and the German driver having to hold off the one-stop strategy of Taylor Adams, who demonstrates in the number one that the one-stop was viable here today for Agenta Sim Racing with the tyre change as well. And many will be asking now, what if he hadn't have changed the tyres? Would he have had the pace? Could he have been a bit closer? Or did he need the tyre change to guarantee he could stay alive? Simon Povey, meanwhile, did not change tyres with regards to that one and only stop, and the F-Tech Racing driver was right behind Adams, so many would perhaps argue at this point, given the extra 13 seconds that were taken for the tyres in the pit lane, Taylor Adams could have in fact won this race if he hadn't changed the tyres. Still, that's a big what-if question, and we will leave that with you to debate in the YouTube chat, should you wish. Behind the F-Tech Racing driver Povey in 5th was Guy Edwards in 6th. The priority there in the Ford Mustang enjoying a race-long battle, but Ben Idris Abdullahi and the Satellite Racing driver in the end had to fall behind to 7th. Behind the Frenchman was your AM winner, three-time AM winner of John Bailiff there for Win It or Bin It Racing. Drove all by himself today with regards to no pressure from his AM peers, and Matt Slate acted as the cork in the bottle there to stop the rest of the AM field flying up into the top 10. The Magenta Sim Racing driver took 9th ahead of Dennis Van Beelen, run up in the AM class there, who took 10th place for chicane and apex missers, but on strategy and on track, he had to fight hard for that spot ahead of Chris Jennings, who was 3rd in AM and best the rest overall for Axis Sim Sports, and Gary Toole there for GST Racing, who many would argue, if it were not for that spin, he should have been definitely in 3rd, if not 2nd, albeit all came down to strategy and late race pressure. We then saw Rob Sharp. He rounded off the top 5 in the AM class there with a 12th place overall. And, well, a result today that's definitely got away for him for a Burris Racing, much like it has to the GST Porsche in front of him. But Mark Johnson as well, having to recover there to 14th for the Trackmouse Racing driver. And the second was on the cards today, but it all slipped out of his hands with the AM class. And ran off your top 15, it was Oliver Carwadine. The Oris Racing teams there finishing in pairs with the yellow team ahead of the red team. It was Heinz Mayer, Ryan Penny and Kim Such who completed your run to 18th place. All three of them a lap down. It was also a lap down there to the boosted motorsport pair of John Roberts and Lee Berridge who completed your top 20. Outside the top 20, in 21st place, 2 laps down but finished the race, chicane and apex missers Alex Gall with that rather early trip to the pits as a result of a technical issue, putting 2 laps down. He was able to continue the race, but unfortunately it will be a loss of points today. Head of SRM Black's Andy Marsden, who in the end finished 4 laps down, and then it was the unfortunate at times early on the race for Duncan Rise for Goldwyn Motorsport and Jake Cranstone for Masters of Torque. As the AM class finishing positions, and of course we must look at these because there's the AM Championship and the points need to be accrued, and as we do see, John Bailiff then becomes a 3-time AM winner this season for Win It or Bin It Racing. He does try to take control of his destiny with 2 rounds to go. Head of Dennis Van Beelen for chicane and apex missers, who's definitely proven today that he is the right to be the second best in class if he can't take on Bailiff. The gap was 20 seconds, but it was nowhere near that when it came from 2nd to 3rd, only being half a second between Van Beelen and Jennings, with the Axis Simsport driver in the end huffing and puffing, but he wasn't able to blow down the defensive wall that Van Beelen was able to set up. And Gary Toole in the end finishing behind the Axis Simsport driver by 7 seconds, 9 he should have been in the hunt for the podium. Rob Sharp finished in 5th then for a Burris Racing in what was a solid start to his race, but a difficult middle portion. Had a Mark Johnson for Trackmouse Racing, whose spin from 2nd place definitely cost him the chance of the win. And Oliver Carwadine there, the last of the lead lap finishers in the AM class. 7th place there for Oris Racing Yellow with a very solid performance. His teammate Heinz Mayer was behind by a lap, with then Oris Racing Reds, Ryan Penny and Kim Such enjoying a great little battle amongst themselves, and Penny got the upper hand in the end with Such completing the top 10. And then boosted motorsport pair John Roberts and Lee Berridge came to this round today, not with the pace in hand, most definitely as we saw in qualifying, and nothing seemed to click sadly for the Ford Mustangs. SRM Black's Andy Marsden was 4 laps down the finish, but still classified as a finisher. And we did have your sole retiree of Duncan Rye for Goldwyn Motorsport, who on his return has definitely seen things end up in the wall a little bit too soon. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our running results to a close, and we're all the racing to a close. But it doesn't quite bring this broadcast to its conclusion, because, of course, we've got our post-round interviews coming up. So don't go anywhere, because in approximately 5 minutes' time, we'll be back to hear from some of our volunteer drivers. And indeed, it's going to be quite an insightful one, because it'll be good to know exactly how they plan the strategy for today. But we'll leave you that thought, and we'll be back very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews of our volunteer drivers, and we're going to kick off by jumping to the AM class and hearing from a driver who definitely found himself right in the thick of it today, whether it was battles or strategy. It's none other than Chris Jennings, who joins me now in the interview room. Good evening to you, Chris, and what a race. The run of podium finishes for this season continues for you in the AM class. Firstly, another third place. You must be absolutely pleased as punch with it.
Oh, 100%, yeah, really happy with that. It wasn't sure if I was going to get on the podium. It was so tight with all the tactics that was going on in that race with a bit of fuel saving and people pitting out of sequence. And yeah, it was a bit tense, but yeah, it worked out in the end.
Oh, most definitely. And talking about the bigger picture of this race, of course, Oschersleben, a very difficult circuit to overtake at and a lot of fuel-saving opportunities. Did you at any point consider the one-stop coming into this, or was it always going to be the two-stop?
I didn't think I could fuel save enough to make a one-stop work. So yeah, I need to practice that a bit more. And I was surprised people were trying it, but yeah, well, fair play if they got close to it. I was just trying to push. And then, yeah, first stint following Matt Slater, he was obviously fuel saving, but doing it very wisely that I couldn't get past him. So I just kind of joined in, but not quite as effective as he is at it.
Well, you might not have been able to quite make the one-stop work today, so you went for the two-stop. But let's then go into a little bit more of the detail. Qualifying, 14th overall, 4th in AM. A very tight qualifying field for third place downwards. Was there a little bit more pace in the car, or were you happy with where you started?
I think I always feel like I could do a bit more. Had more pace in practice, but I guess the track changes a bit. But yeah, it was really, really close to a bunch of us there. I noticed that, so shame, but I'm sure everyone else would say the same. They'd probably find another 10th or two. But yeah, it was okay. I was quite happy where I was. I just wanted to have a clean first few laps because it's a pretty tricky track here in the GT4s. It's quite easy to spin out on cold tyres. So yeah, that was my main concern going into the race, really.
So coming into the race itself then, with how tight it was, we saw in the early stages, and we're seeing on the replay footage at the moment, a very long proverbial conga line of cars, and you found yourself right in the midst of it, albeit you had a rather, dare I say, slightly impatient Dennis Van Beelen nipping at your heels for the opening stint. I mean, how was it juggling having the Ford Mustang driver looking very bulky in your rearview mirror?
It's scary. That thing's loud. So when he's coming close, so you can hear him. And Dennis is a fair driver. I knew he wouldn't completely send it, but I just didn't want to leave a big enough gap for him to even have a go. But yeah, it was tense, particularly with the fuel savings going on ahead into that T1 braking zone. There was a lot of fuel lifting early, and I was just trying to protect that really. But yeah, it was good fun. It was a good race. I enjoyed it. Always good to race against Dennis. He's a good racer.
Oh, 100%. As the race went on, we did see, in a way, this four-way fight evolve between yourself, Dennis, Gary Toole, and Rob Sharp. I mean, after the first pit stop, the four of you were only separated by a total of 3 seconds. And it looked to be constantly going that way with yourself and Gary more fighting for what was, at the time, if my memory serves me correctly, you would have been fighting for third or second place. Mark Johnson then falls down the order, though, and it becomes a fight for second.
Yeah, I didn't see what happened. I saw Mark go off at T2, I suppose that is, but I wasn't sure what happened to him. It's a shame. He's had no luck this season, Mark, but he had a lot of pace. But yeah, when he dropped behind, yeah, suddenly it became more, had a chance for getting a podium. So yeah, grip the steering wheel even harder, I suppose, at that point. But yeah, all good.
Well, a bit of gripping the steering wheel harder, but I can imagine you might have gripped it even more tensely so when we did see, with the loss of Rob Sharp, he fell down the order. It then went from a 4-way battle to 3. You're behind Dennis Van Beelen, and suddenly Gary Toole comes out the pit lane after the final pit stop. I mean, what was it like from your perspective?
Tight. He came out of the pits, and I tapped him with a 0x, and I think I made him wobble a bit, so I eased off a bit, let him get past, go back, stay ahead of me, because it seemed a bit unfair to tip him out of third, and then just slide in behind him. And unfortunately, he made a mistake later on, a few laps later, and yeah, managed to get past. So yeah, it worked out. But yeah, that was a pretty tight moment. I knew it was going to be tight. because of the way the pit was working. Dennis did well there actually to pit early, and obviously jumped me, and then yeah, the three of us were pretty close.
Oh, it was very close all the way to the end. And in the end, a third place. You didn't quite have the pace to chase down Van Beelen, but you're always a present threat like he was at the start of the race. So it's another podium. And come the end of 6 rounds, we've still got 2 to go. I do have to ask, how are you feeling? Because you're right in the hunt, technically, for the championship still.
Yeah, I mean, good. Just, yeah, I think... don't know about the overall. I may not be able to make the last round, but work might get in the way of that one. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, get some good practice in for Red Bull Ring, which I think that's the next one, isn't it? So yeah, see how we go. Try and get another podium if I can, but you never know what happens in these races. Some good drivers here.
Oh, 100%. In terms of the Red Bull Ring, is it a circuit you enjoy, or is it going to need to be quite a bit of practice?
I haven't driven it that much, really. Not certainly not on GT4s, but yeah, I'll give it a good go and yeah, see how we get on. Try and avoid all the X's. I think it'd be a lot of off track, be an off track, I think.
Or fair play. Well, they say practice makes perfect, and we wish you the best of that practice. Now, at this point, normally, just before we let you go, we'd normally ask if you want to give a shout out at all. But because Christmas is around the corner, Chris, if I had to ask you, what's the one thing that you would put in your sim racing Christmas stocking, what would it be?
Oh, well, no money, no object.
No money, no object.
I'll tell you what, a race win in SRM. Let's put that in the stocking.
Oh, I like it. Something very different. I think many might have predicted hardware or something along those lines, but a race win.
I was about to go for Simuclub active pedal set, but then yeah, my wife might not let me do that.
Well, we'll see if Santa. Well, Chris, we'll have to see if Santa will deliver a potential win for yourself in the AM class next time out of the Red Bull Ring in 3 weeks' time. But until then, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And well done once again on another podium. A great result. And, well, savour it, my friend. And we'll see you in 2026.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Paul.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we heard there from Chris Jennings, and what an idea there for what will be in his sim racing at Christmas stocking, a race win. Definitely caught me by surprise there, but a very good one. But also a very well-run race from the number 22 driver, and demonstrating this balancing act, if you will, of needing to manage both strategy and pace. And talking about qualifying, found that it was right in the thick of a very close field. I knew this was going to be a race that really came down to management. And in the early stages, despite the pressure from Dennis Van Beelen, and being able to hear that Mustang just as much as being able to see it, he did not wilt under the pressure. But as the pit stops went on, we saw the shuffle. We saw Van Beelen eventually get ahead. And then for Jennings, it's all about trying to follow him as close as possible. And then the interdiction of Gary Toole into the pair meant that suddenly Jennings found himself very close to the back of the Porsche. Unfortunately, made the contact, talked about the 0x contact there, and sending the Porsche a little bit sideways, and made sure not to gain from it. And when then with Toole falling, only a couple of laps later, it was Jennings' third place to take, albeit, of course, with the caveat of Mark Johnson's difficulty, seeing him promoted a place, and we're making a mention there to the difficulties of Mark. But for Chris Jennings, well, he might not be able to make the season finale at Alton Park, but he could go out with a bang at the Red Bull Ring, and we'll have to wait and see where he's able to make that win possible when we do return to the race in January. But ladies and gentlemen, before we do look ahead to January, we've still got plenty more interviews to come. We've got another interview just around the way. And so we now come to our second interview, and we come to the Pro class to talk to a man who made the one-stop happen today. It's none other than Taylor Adams, who joins me in the interview room. Good evening to you, Taylor, and well, firstly, allow me to congratulate both yourself and Simon Povey for becoming our first one-stoppers for this season, and a season dominated by two-stoppers. I mean, how'd you do it? Are you surprised you're able to pull it off, or have you got a grin on your face right now saying, yep, I knew I could make it happen?
I was pretty confident I could. Me and Simon had discussed it, and so me and Matt Slight, we'd been talking about it and tried it a bit in the days leading up to it, and we weren't sure pace-wise whether it would be enough, but I mean, I got a better result than I think I would have if I'd gone flat out. But I oversaved a bit in the second stint because I wasn't sure whether it was going to be 40 or 39 laps, so I oversaved to then play it safe, and then it meant I got to push at the end, and if I'd known earlier, I might have been able to get Nils, but still, good result.
Oh, 100%. Definitely a very strong result and a bit of a surprise result for many of the field. Just before we come into the strategy a little bit further, let's talk a bit slightly about qualifying. 7th place overall. Were you happy with that qualifying position? Because I get the thing you might have wanted to be a bit closer to the front for what you were attempting.
I wasn't too disheartened just because I didn't want to be right in the front group and then end up someone tripping over me because I had to lift because we were having to lift so early. But yeah, I mean, my qualifying this season's been overall pretty terrible, so I was expecting as much, but yeah, I think it was a bit of a blessing because I was I wasn't in the way too much in the way of everyone. I still had a bit of a train behind me at times, but it wasn't. Yeah, it was a bit safer, I guess, me not qualifying as well.
Well, safety first then when it came to qualifying down in 7th, and it seemed to work out for you in the early stages. You're able to give yourself breathing room to the AM and also pro drivers around you. So that opening strategy worked quite well. I do have to ask, with regards to the fuel saving and also the tyre management, we saw you take on some tyres in the pits. Was that part of the plan as well, or was that a bit of a 50-50 coin flip, whether to do it or not?
I always have to take as 2 tyres because I'm just so rubbish at keeping them cool. So it was never a question of if I was going to take tyres. It was more a question of which tyres I was going to take. So yeah, it just meant it means the outlap's a bit sketch, and this horrendous pit exit at Oschersleben was really dangerous or really dodgy, but survived it and, lived to fight another day.
Oh, 100% indeed. Only needed to make your way through that pit exit once today, but you got it absolutely spot on. And as the race went on, we did see you get very close come the end of the second pit stop to all the 2 stoppers to the back of Nils Corr, and you started to pump in some of your very best laps as well. I get the feeling there was a point where you started to say, you know what, it's now time for game on.
Yeah, so I was saving for just in case it went to 40 laps because I was 50-50 on whether it was going to. And then when I realised it was definitely only going to be 39, I had basically a lap and a half of extra fuel. So I just went for it then. Still wasn't flat out just in case I, got it wrong in my head and my overlay and everything was wrong. So I played it a bit safe, but I had some extra fuel to play with, which I think, was quite lucky actually that that it kept changing earlier on in the race how many laps it was going to be because it gave me a chance to fight against someone. So one more lap I'd have run out of fuel, but a little bit, I think a few more corners I maybe could have took the fight to Nils, but I just didn't have quite enough time. But yeah, I mean, to be that close, it's the closest I've been to Nils this season, so I'll take it.
Well, indeed, a brilliant effort from yourself, and well, we've got to give a round of applause to you for pulling off the strategy and getting so close all the way to the end. And with that, one other question I do have on the strategy, we of course saw Simon follow you through for the majority of it. Was there ever a risk in the back of your mind that Simon might be cheeky and go for a move at some point and it sort of locks you both into a one-stop, but you lose the time to everybody else?
I never really worried about it too much because I knew we both had the same strategy going. So if he went for it, I was more than happy to just sit behind him. He was perfectly capable of, perfectly fast enough to lead me as well. So I was happy to let him through and save fuel if it came to it. But I think he was conscious of the same thing as me, that if an overtake does happen, it might cost us half a second, and then it's, that would affect us later in the race. So I wasn't too concerned if he did, but I don't think he really planned on making the move, but I don't know.
Oh, indeed. Always a question there, but still wasn't to come. And in the end, a very solid 4th place finish. One of your finest finishes of the season. We've got 2 rounds to go. Next up is the Red Bull Ring. How are you feeling for our trip to Austria?
Yeah, this Austria is where I got my first win in SRM, so I enjoy the track. It's good fun. And it's been my last race of the season because I'm not able to do the last round. So I'm going to try and go out with a good result and one stop it again. No, I don't think it'd be possible there. But I think this was the only track it would be possible at. So yeah, I'll just try and strategize my way to the front or race my way, see what happens.
Oh, it's unfortunate we won't see you in our season finale at Alton Park. We hope you can end your season at the Red Bull Ring with a great result. And at this point, I'd normally ask you to give a shout out to anyone you fancy, but because Christmas is around the corner, I'm going to ask you a Christmas question, and it is Christmas songs. Have you had them on, be honest with us, before the start of December?
Not this year, no. I don't think so. Maybe if one came on the radio, I wouldn't change the station. But no, I haven't listened to any Christmas songs out of my own. I haven't chose to. I don't think yet this year.
Oh, fair play. So Mariah Carey hasn't quite poured out in your radio stations at the moment, Taylor. But to be fair, may have for others. But with that, we'll leave it there. And say once again, congratulations on the 1 stop, and with it converting 7th into 4th, an absolutely brilliant effort. And we look forward to seeing you at the Red Bull Ring. But until then, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Have a nice Christmas.
So hearing there, ladies and gentlemen, from Taylor Adams from Magenta Sim Racing, and what a great effort today. Putting it out on the table that he had planned the 1 stop all the way since the start, and identifying this round as the one round where he could do the 1 stop strategy, and well, in the end made it work in combination with Simon Povey. But of course, a lot of work had to be done, and the 7th place in qualifying, a bit of a blessing, as you mentioned there, because he wasn't in the thick of the forward field to end up being in the position where he might end up fighting and not being able to save the fuel he needed to guarantee the 1-stop strategy. And if anything, being able to oversave the fuel meant he could be a bit more competitive late on. The tyre change there, he mentioned, was mandated as a result of his concerns around tyre management. So a very good effort there from him, and being able to use the extra tyre towards the end enabled him to go on the attack. Albeit a little bit gutted not quite to be able to steal away the 3rd place from Nils Corr, but very proud to be that close to the satellite racing driver at the close, and well, definitely a sign there of seeing all the positives from today. It's a bit unfortunate, however, we'll only see him at the Red Bull Ring and not at Alton Park, but for Taylor Adams, he's definitely going to try and end the season on a high there, and we look forward to seeing what he's going to be able to do. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got one more interview to come. Don't go anywhere, we'll be back very shortly. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we come to our final interview of the day, and it is none other than Nils Corr, who joins me now in the interview room. Good evening to you, Nils, and what a race from yourself again today. And in fact, I'd say this might feel as though it's a bit of a deja vu of the Nürburgring from 2 weeks ago, and the fact that in the end tried to chase the top 3 down on pace, wasn't quite able to stay with them, but in the end rewarded with a 3rd place.
Yeah, good evening, Paul. Sort of most of the races this season feel like a deja vu. Already after qualifying, always starting 4th behind Alex, Stuart, and Matias. And then the first few laps I can keep up. And then I just start dropping down slowly because I just can't seem to keep the tires working as long as they can. And then, I just start making more mistakes, and then I drop down even further.
Well, to be fair, whilst you may have made the mistakes, one thing you definitely did not make too much of a mistake on was being able to keep it on the track and keep well in the hunt for the top 5 spots. And in a BMW as well, which I can imagine it's been a bit of a theme this season, this BMW quite prickly on its tyres. How was it as Oschersleben?
Oschersleben is obviously not really the best track for this kind of car with a very long wheelbase. So it was definitely a challenge, especially in the end. I just had nothing left on the tires. It just wouldn't turn anymore.
Well, not the easiest car to get right around here, but still, you're able to make the most of it. And strategy-wise, obviously, we have had a couple of drives today go with the one-stop strategy. Did you have any temptation to try it, or was it always a two-stop?
I knew that it would have been possible, but I wasn't 100% sure, and I also figured that I'd probably be quicker if I decided to just save a bit of fuel, but not as much to do a one-stopper, and it seemed to work out in the end.
Almost definitely. Strategy worked out quite nicely, although, speaking of towards the end, we saw you come out from your second pit stop, and not too far behind was the man we just spoken to of Taylor Adams. Did that surprise you at all that he was right there at the end and able to stay with you on pace?
I kind of expected it to be close, so I wasn't so much surprised about that. What I was surprised about, that he actually had saved so much fuel that he could push on and even catch me back after I already started pulling away a bit. And I've heard that he also swapped tires during one of his stops, so he just had a advantage on me there. And yeah, I just, as I already mentioned, I had nothing left, so I was just trying to keep it on track and not give him any gap to go for.
Well, you managed to keep him behind, and in the end, it wasn't just for a fourth place stay, it was a third place. Appreciate it's come at the cost of Alex Garl, who had technical issues, but still some solid points to come from this round.
Yeah, definitely. I can be really happy about that. Basically, a podium on my home track, so I don't complain about that.
Well, no complaints there. And with 2 rounds to go, next up after our 3-week Christmas break, we do have a trip to Austria for the Red Bull Ring. What can we expect from you there?
It has a lot of straights, so I'm kind of hoping that this will be suiting the BMW once again. So we're looking forward to it.
And we look forward to you giving it your all when you do chase the cars down the straights at the Red Bull Ring. And Nils, as it is Christmas time, whereas I'd normally say to you, who would you like to give a shout out to? We're going to ask you a Christmas themed question. And that question being, if you could put anything in your Christmas stocking, what would it be from a sim racing perspective?
That's a good question. Probably, I guess a new steering wheel will be nice. Could need that.
All fair play. Definitely. If you had to go for one in particular, do you have one in mind?
I haven't really looked out so far, but my current one is kind of starting to have some issues, so I might be looking for it. But I've just spent quite a lot of money on a new PC, so I have to probably wait for next year for that.
Well, Nils, we'll leave it there. A new steering wheel at Christmas at some point, perhaps, after the PC, which you just bought. But with that, congratulations on your 3rd place finish today at your home circuit. A very solid drive and well held on to at the very end. We'll see you at the Red Bull Ring in 3 weeks' time. But until then, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you, Paul.
So hearing there, ladies and gentlemen, from Nils Corr, our final interview for tonight. And, well, they're talking about the fact that the BMW he expected to be quite a difficult car to shuffle around the circuit, given its long wheelbase and the fact that as the race went on, the tyre life gradually slipped away from him and he just didn't have anything left towards the very end. And that's what surprised him, was the fact that because Taylor Adams had been able to save so much fuel and had taken the change for a couple of tyres, therefore there was the threat of losing that 3rd place at the close. Also talked about there, it does feel as though this round has been one of many rounds of deja vu, where he's qualified in 4th place and tried to hold on to the top 3, only for them to pull away. But this time, of course, it was a 3rd place, given the technical issue for Alex Garl, which saw him have to bring the car into the pits, and of course he was able to pick out that 3rd place. But a solid result, and he heads to the Red Bull Ring, fancying his chances at the circuit, with its longer straight, favouring the BMW M4, much more of a stop-start circuit, and we look forward to seeing whether the satellite racing driver can make some magic happen there in the penultimate round of the season. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our interviews to a close, and a huge thank you to all 3 of our interviews for tonight. We firstly heard from the AM Classes podium finisher of Axis Simsport's Chris Jennings, but we then heard from the pro pair, firstly from Fury Simsport of Stuart Reynolds, and then we heard from none other than Nils Corr. And a big well done to all 3 drivers today on their brilliant performances. And, well, I can tell you one thing. In fact, we didn't quite hear from Stuart Reynolds. We did hear instead from none other than Taylor Adams. And, well, ladies and gentlemen, it's great to hear from all of them. Congratulations to all on their performances. And we look forward to hearing from them all in future rounds, of course. And, indeed, seeing what they can do in the rounds remaining, of which with only 2 rounds to go, well, there's plenty of points on the table, perhaps. But we are definitely heading towards the absolute precipice of the championship. With that, it is, however, time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know how you can be on the grid at Sim Racing Magazine, well, the number one way to do so is by joining our official Discord, and that, of course, may be joined using the invite link available on screen. We're a growing community at the Sim Racing Magazine, and indeed a very gentlemanly and professional community, and therefore there's never been a better time to get on the grid at Sim Racing Magazine and join the rank and file of many a driver who is very eager to enjoy very clean racing but highly competitive racing as well with it. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series sponsor, and that is Oris Digital. And small teams can make a huge impact in the digital marketing and e-commerce space. Oris Digital knows that best. With 20 years of collective experience in growing businesses through online marketing channels via the provision of services including affiliate management, Amazon marketing, and digital strategy, Oris Digital delivers tangible results to its clients. If you'd like to know more about how Oris Digital can help grow your business, be sure to head to their website today at www.oris.digital. That web address again, www.oris.digital. We'd also like to take a moment, ladies and gentlemen, to say a shout out to our series partner, and that is Ouroboros Watch, their web address being www.ouroboros.com. And, well, to tell a little bit of story about Ouroboros Watch, one of our drivers, Rob Sharp, runs Ouroboros Watch, which designs and markets watch faces for smartwatches running Google's Wear OS operating system. This Sim Racing Magazine themed watch face, as you see on the right hand side of your screen, is currently under development, and Rob hopes to make it available on Google Play Store in a few weeks' time. It features a pit board that includes your race position, which improves as you near your step target for the day, a racetrack with selectable colours for each sector, and the trademark SRM branding along with other useful information such as heart rate, so you can manage your excitement level in the next SRM race. If you'd like to know more about Ouroboros Watch's watch faces for smartwatches, why not head to their website of www.ouroboros.com. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, it is time for our mid-season break. That's right. Whereas normally each and every round occurs every 2 weeks, we will be moving 3 weeks forward in time when we return for round number 7 on Tuesday, the 6th of January 2026, because Christmas is around the corner, and allow me to lead the wishes on the behalf of Sim Racing Magazine, as we do say thank you very much for tuning in all the way through the season so far. And our present to you, of course, has been some absolutely brilliant racing so far this season, and what lies in store when we do come back. But until then, we wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and well, we do hope you're able to have a brilliant time, whether it's by yourself or with friends and family, and you're able to find Christmas joy. Indeed, when we come back in the new year, there'll be plenty of resolutions, but who will have the resolve to bring on home a victory in Austria? That's the question we will need to find out. But until then, we've been Sim Racing Magazine. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, like our drivers, remember to stay on track. Good night.